OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It's 7:30 on this Wednesday morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. It's Eoin and Johnny Ward and Johnny's Toast with you all the way until 10 o'clock this morning. We'll get a sneak preview of that in just a moment. We'll have Mark Lawrenson with us after 8 o'clock to review last night's madness in the Champions League. Look ahead to Liverpool versus Villarreal. We'll have Matt Williams chatting rugby a little bit later on. And we're also remembering the work of art that is McCarthy's Park a little bit later on as well, because why not? Why not remember one of the greatest Irish sports documentaries we've seen? A lot of this morning, though, is going to be spent on trying to pick through what happened at the Etihad last night. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the Champions League. You can tweet us at Off The Ball, or you can comment on the YouTube stream if that's where you're getting us this morning. Nathan's also going to be with us for the morning. Nathan, how are you getting on?
Morning, lads.
A 10 out of 10 game last night?
Oh, yeah. Oh, this was as good as it gets. Outrageously good. One of those matches you have to watch back the highlights the following morning to remember how many good moments there were, how many brilliant goals there were. And it just seems to be every Tuesday, Wednesday night in the Champions League. It just gets better and better and better.
There were no highlights is the thing. The entire first half was an entire highlights package. I watched the whole game at around 11 o'clock last night, and I was like, okay, you can fast forward through the lulls here in the game. And it's like, there literally are no lulls. It took until about, I think, 60 minutes for there to be that first passage of play where Manchester City do that thing where they control possession for a while, the ball goes from side to side. But for that, literally the first half, it was completely frantic in a way that, from Real Madrid's perspective, you just wouldn't have expected. You would have thought that there would have been some sort of way that they could have just put the brakes on the pace of the game a little bit. But they were happy to go and let this thing explode into madness as well.
Well, from both sides, Real Madrid being the away team, but also Manchester City's style of play is often to just kill it and to dominate possession and to be incredibly patient. Whereas this felt like a big European night at a club with a massive European history where the energy becomes too much for the players and they just get swept up in the emotion of it. Like Manchester City, coming away from that, will wonder how the tie is still alive. They should have scored 7-8 goals last night. They were, as an attacking force, as good as we have seen from them, maybe since Pep Guardiola came to the club. They just left it all out there. Like Kevin De Bruyne had possibly his best performance in a Manchester City jersey. It's been coming over the last few weeks. He has becoming more and more influential. The drive that he has, the strength that he has under pressure while dribbling with the ball, when there's 1-2 players on his back to hold them off, to still be able to lift his head and to pick out a pass. Phil Foden looks to be right at the top of his game. Riyad Mahrez, I can never understand how he isn't an automatic selection in that Manchester City side. So attacking-wise, City were just brilliant. And I don't know how Real Madrid just hung on in there. Like, you look back at that game, it doesn't feel like any Real Madrid player was exceptional, but they just never die. And we've seen it consistently during this year's tournament, through the history of the Champions League. They just find a way, and Luka Modric at crucial moments of the game without being at his very best, can pick out a pass, can ease a little bit of pressure, and then the just pure genius of Benzema to score the opening goal, which maybe unsettles Manchester City a little bit. Well, I say that, but they came back straight away and could have scored another couple. It was. You just can't wait for the second leg.
Yeah, it's going to be brilliant.
That moment where, Nathan, where Mahrez is through a 2-0 and doesn't square for Foden and Guardiola completely loses the plot, I think for me was just like, you can tell how much this means to him. And even at 2-0, he's like, we need a third goal here. And you're thinking like 2-0 up against Man City or against Real, they're fine. They'll coast through this. And you could tell that he was... maybe that's the reason he doesn't play Mahrez all the time. Like, why did you not square the ball to Foden?
Well, for him to hit it with his right foot as well is probably completely unacceptable in the Manchester City culture, where you always have to take the right option. When he's bearing down in goal, you're waiting for the pass, because that's always what Manchester City do. But I think the stadium was so alive at that stage, and Manchester City were so alive that he just felt, well, this is the moment. Everything is going right for us. And at that stage, I was a little bit disappointed in that, again, we built these matches up to be these stone cold classics and thinking, City are going to win this 3 or 4-0. Yeah, we might get a little bit of something next week with a sign of a Real Madrid comeback, but this isn't going to be one of those nights. And I'm still not quite sure, having watched it live and watched back the highlights, how it turned around. Because, say, Manchester City were just so good in ways in a different style than we have seen them be so good. This was I don't want to say it was almost like Manchester City playing like Liverpool, in that it was more that sort of shock and awe style of real high pace and intensity and less control than you would expect from a Manchester City side, which it does seem a lot of people spend a lot of time with their cameras on Pep Guardiola, even supporters or journalists just planted there, because there's dozens of videos of his reactions to every moment in the match. And listen, he's always on edge, I think, during any game, a Carabao Cup game. But
this is his legacy, though. This is his legacy. This is it. Like, they got to win the Champions League.
They do, but like, his legacy is sort of set in stone in many ways. As one of the greatest managers. But it would be an underachievement not to win a Champions League with this group of players who, as a squad, the best in Europe, the most expensively assembled in Europe. They should be winning a Champions League. I do think that things can happen in knockout competitions where an offside decision, think back to the game against Spurs a couple of years ago, where there's late goals disallowed and there's late winners. Things can happen that mean the best team doesn't necessarily always win the Champions League, but to go through a 5-6 year spell and not win one with this group of players, it doesn't tarnish his legacy, but it certainly doesn't enhance it.
Speaking of cameras that are being trained on Pep Guardiola, we can have a look at what his reaction was to Fernandinho getting turned by Vinicius last night. This is fan footage from the Etihad last night. Keep your eyes on Pep. Hands in the head as soon as he gets turned. On his knees, on one knee, hand on the ground as he sees Vinicius go through, back of the net. Devastated, fuming. I love how in the aftermath of the game, Pep is like, this is fine, everything's absolutely grand, Real Madrid, good team. Like, Pep Guardiola almost oversaw, I think, an 8-2 last night. This could have been Bayern-Barcelona last night, and not too many things needed to go differently. Maybe not at that magnitude, but it could have been a 6-2 last night. I think Pep Guardiola is fuming this morning when he thinks back to some of those moments last night.
Like, some of them are unavoidable. If Fernandinho, which was his decision to put him on at right back when John Stones goes off injured. Now, they obviously have problems with Cancelo suspended, Kyle Walker not there, but you still wonder, he'll often play Nathan Ake at left back. Could you play Nathan Ake at right back? Because from the moment Fernandinho came on, you felt there's a real opportunity for Real Madrid to get at him here, because how can he ever have the pace that you would need to play in that position right now? But it could have been. This could have been a landmark night for Manchester City. It could have been City's greatest ever performance. It might well have been City's greatest ever performance last night. But the result now doesn't reflect that. And with City's history in the tournament and of everything that could possibly go wrong, going wrong, whether it's a tactical selection or a referee's decision or just not performing on the night, with that history on one side and Real Madrid's history, both this season and historically, of just somehow always been able to get the job done, he must be incredibly nervous going to the Bernabeu next Wednesday night.
I think part of the Fernandinho thing as well is he comes on and he skins his man down the right hand side, gets the assist in front of the goals, and he's like, I can do this. Yeah. I'm 24 again. This is absolutely fine. Vinicius, I'm going to take you. I'm going to get the ball and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to get down the right wing and get a second assist. And then all of a sudden it's like, actually.
How tight he was, just like, there's a lapse of judgment in terms of like where he is in life at the moment. But I mean, in
well,
fairness,
he's Bruce Banner when he's defending. He's the Incredible Hulk when he was going forward.
Yeah. In fairness, I mean, like, they should go over there and like they're a goal up. They should just basically manage that game and play them on the break, no problems, like, in theory. But
City don't generally play on the break. Like, City's defined style is to have control. And by giving up control of the game, I'm sure the feeling would be that you allow Real Madrid more opportunities. The problem with Madrid is just the genius that is there, with Benzema being right up there among the best players in the world, certainly the most informed player in the world right now, that out of nothing, consistently, back-to-back Champions League games, he has been able to create goals. So I don't know if City can go away from home, let Madrid dominate possession. I think they certainly need more control than they had last night. They need to go back to, I don't want to get into a debate about our City boring or exciting or whatever, but just that, 1,000 passes per game, control it, not any sort of shock and awe like they had last night. But can you do that in the Bernabeu in a Champions League semi-final away from home? I'm not too sure.
It is 20 to 8. You're with us here on OTB AM, which is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Let's tell you what's coming up over the course of the next couple of hours. Champions League, we're going to stick on this for the next little while, and then Mark Lawrenson will hop on the line at 8:10. We'll also preview Liverpool against Villarreal before we're done this morning. Sports pages coming your way at 8:25 this morning. A couple of interesting bits in there, not least Darragh O'Shea having a bit of a pop off Cork, calling them a disgrace this morning. We might get producer Colin Buig's reaction to that to defend the people of Cork.
What sort of Yeraism is that on?
I don't know. This is really avoiding the script, ripping up the script, and giving Cork a little bit more petrol for their sense of trying to take Kerry down in a couple of weeks. We've got the news update with Cahill a little bit later on, and Have You Seen coming up at 10 to 9, which is on McCarthy's Park. Matt Williams then, we'll be talking rugby at 9:10, and then some OTB reaction from 9:30. Johnny, you were out and about last night. How did you manage to watch? You watched this in chunks, I understand, last night?
Watched, was at the low gig, Vicar Street. Felt very old. Most people there seem to be like 50 odd, so they're going on for
felt very young, I would have thought, if that's the average age.
Yeah, but you're looking around, you're like, everyone has beards here, like, and so on and so forth. Watch the first half.
What sort of gig are you going to where they wouldn't have beards?
Everyone has beards and like grey beards as well. But I watched the first half in a new bar, Dudley's, and then watched the second half, and I came back like you and just put it on. And it was just like you couldn't take your eyes off it. It was like how Man City, like, what was the XG in that game? Like, it certainly wasn't 4-3, and it was, I don't know, part of me doesn't want them at all to succeed in anything, just the way the club is structured, and I certainly hope they don't win the Champions League. And you're just looking at these like Real players who probably should be past it at this stage but can still do it, and I don't know, you can see Guardiola that he's like, you know, this should be home and hosed, and it's not. And
yeah, would you believe the XG, if we're rounding up and down, it was actually 3-2 last night.
XG?
I don't know how that happened.
Okay.
Man City were 3.08, Real Madrid were 1.66, according to the XG philosophy on Twitter.
How was your evening?
Very good. I was at Metronomy at the Olympia. Unfortunately, I didn't get the first half in before the game. Yeah. I saw 2-0 and I was like, grand. This is a highlights package. You'll be able to get a good sense of things. And then when I saw 4-3, I was like, right, I'm going to have to watch the full 90 when I get home. But, I mean, as I said, absolutely.
The funny thing was Real, like, they shouldn't be able to do this. But even, I don't know, Nathan, at 2-0, you're kind of like, nah, this still could be a little bit of a twist to this, like.
In one way, but City were creating so many chances, it felt inevitable they were going to get a third. It was just that we have seen Real Madrid do it so many times. And it wasn't as if they got back into the game by getting a stranglehold on it. It was just one brilliant delivery, a sensational finish from Benzema that got them there. But there is something innate in Real Madrid that they can hang about. Like, if they were to somehow win the Champions League this season, to go and beat Man City and then Villarreal or Liverpool, it'll be up there with one of the great managerial achievements from Carlo Ancelotti, who, you know, on this show has questioned quite a bit about just how good he is as a manager. And like, last night sums him up. Like, was there anything about last night's performance in Real Madrid that you would say, you know what, tactically Carlo Ancelotti got it spot on last night? Not really. Like, Manchester City were absolutely rampant with the way that Real Madrid set up. But they have enough talent in players that shouldn't have the talent they still have at that age, in Modric and Benzema in particular, and the bit of pace of Vinicius and Rodrigo. And I thought Fede Valverde was excellent last night, maybe their best player consistently on the pitch. But somehow he always seems to have a group of players who just get a job done for him. But, you know, could any manager have done that last night? I don't know. Like, that's the genius in many ways of Ancelotti.
Ancelotti always feels like as well that everything happens to him by accident, that he's just standing there and all the chaos is ensuing around him, and he's kind of like shrugging his shoulders, almost like, what can I do about it? Like, it's up to you. And like, obviously that's not the reality of what Ancelotti has done. Like, I mean, he could go in and win a Champions League title in the 2020s, having won one in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. It'd be an extraordinary career. Like, Nathan, when you mentioned there the slander of Ancelotti that's been on this show in the past, like, I'm not sure who even that is. Like, what's your personal take on it? Like, and how many current managers would you have ahead of him in terms of the great European managers?
In terms of European history, or just right now? Like, are you giving him? Well, he has one of the biggest jobs. Different managers have different ways, and like Pep Guardiola couldn't be more the opposite on the sideline than Carlo Ancelotti. You see, Ancelotti's reaction to everything is nothing to do with me, both the good and the bad. It's not like he's trying to claim credit for the good stuff either, it seems. Whereas Guardiola is, pulling the strings. I always go back to watching Manchester City, Manchester United about 4 years ago, and I spent the whole game pretty much watching Guardiola was sitting right behind them.
It's like
and
the
Danilo
Damien
was
Duff
playing
modern Shelburne.
right back. Well, yes, Damien Duff Shelburne, of course. Danilo was playing it right back. It was the game where City were about to win the league and United came back. Pogba, probably his best game in United jersey. But Danilo stood right in front of Pep Guardiola. And I don't think he did a single thing in that first half that Pep Guardiola didn't tell him to do. So he stood there and he waited almost ready to pounce, and he'd be in a sprinter's position, ready to run up the wing, and he would wait from the shout from Guardiola to go. Like, that's how hands-on he was. That whether it was a lack of trust in the player or a tactic that was there, but everything he did, it was the manager telling him in every moment to do it. And that's not
what a coach should do, like that. But that's not what a coach should do, and that's kind of the mad thing about him. Like, basically the coach should be able to sit off and do very little. And even at League of Ireland level, it's interesting to observe the difference. Like, I was at the Rovers in North game recently. Stephen Bradley and Stephen O'Donnell, totally different. Stephen O'Donnell would be more living it all. Bradley's just taking. Like, you should trust your players to basically know what to do in a game situation.
Gee, Stephen O'Donnell really lives it all.
He does. He just, but he just like he's. And you can see he's not that long from like being a player himself, and when you make the wrong pass or you don't do exactly what he would have done in that situation, you can see that frustration. And for me, that was exactly like that with the Mahrez Foden thing last night, where Guardiola's like, how do you not square the ball? It's the most obvious thing ever.
But does it make a difference? And if we had a former player on, and I think we've spoken about this before with Kilban, who would feel that players, once the game is on, take little or no notice of what the manager is saying on the sideline or doing on the sideline. But you certainly don't want the manager sort of making a fool of himself on the sideline at the same time. Like, Guardiola's different. He obviously had a lack of trust maybe in that player. But I do think, if you're losing it, absolutely losing it on the sideline at a player consistently, can't but affect him in some way. So, sorry, go back to the original point. Ancelotti clearly has a way of managing players, maybe more than coaching players, and being able to allow them perform in the best possible manner. So he's always going to get big jobs. Is he suited to Everton? Was he suited to Everton? I'm not quite sure. Doesn't seem like he possibly was, but is he in that circle of just going from Real Madrid and maybe someday he'll end up at Juventus? Like, he's never going to be stuck for cash. He's never going to be stuck for a job.
Yeah.
But is he going to come in and transform a side?
It definitely feels as if Real Madrid have stumbled upon a couple of managers who are perfect for that dressing room, from Zidane to Ancelotti, and it could end up being the exact same outcome in terms of winning the Champions League. There's been a big reaction, obviously, to what's happening. Just before you come back in there, Nathan, Michael says, very enjoyable game, but lack of any defence was frustrating. Shifty Lad says, Kenny Cunningham would need counselling after that match. Michael Collins says City will regret not putting this game beyond Real Madrid last night. If they get Casemiro back, then they have a real chance, excuse the pun, in Madrid. And MJ Maloney once says, of course City go there and dominate. Didn't Chelsea go there 2 weeks and better them and should have gone through? City are a far better side. City will go there and win easily. Do you share that level of confidence, Nathan?
Well, they should do. On the basis of last night's performance, and as that texter said, on the basis that they're a far better side than Chelsea are. They should. It wouldn't be a shock in any way. It would be very much along the form lines of the talent in the two squads if City went there and won well. But that ain't how this works. That is not how this works, and it hasn't been how it's worked for Manchester City throughout Champions League recent history, or for Real Madrid. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we have more of the same again next week.
It's a failure of Guardiola if they don't get through this, because they're a far better team than Real. They have
Is it though?
Yeah, it is, because this is like you can see on the sideline last night he's kind of losing the plot a bit, like that this game isn't over and done with. They should be winning this game, simple as. They should be.
But who do you blame for them not being out of the sight last night? You can't blame Guardiola for that, really.
Not last night. They have two legs, so just go over there and get the job done. Like, Liverpool would get the job done against Real Madrid, no problem. Like, they would literally just win this game because that's what they do. Like, so Man City, the whole situation with Guardiola is that they will win the league. every other year, if they don't win it this year, they should win the Champions League under his watch. And if they don't do it this year, he feels that I think they should do it. And they should be winning this game. They've better resources, they've better players. They conceded 3 goals at home against Real Madrid.
It was quite funny last night that immediately after Pep gets booked, Real Madrid go and score. I'm not sure it has a real impact at all. I don't think Fernandinho's suddenly going to become fast if Pep Guardiola doesn't get booked in that moment. But I think other than that, I don't think there's very much you could look at from Pep last night. As when you could very much make the case that the Fernandinho thing after he gets that assist is something that worked out and is a bit of a masterstroke. Of course, I mean the other side of things maybe go against him. So maybe
they're a goal up going to Madrid. Just get the job done, simple as.
Yeah. We have to see how it plays out. I think there have been a very specific moments over the last couple of years where you're like, that's clearly your fault, Pep. But I think from the first half of this game, from this 2-legged tie, I think you can say you'd be clutching at straws, I think, to say this is Pep's fault. But in a wider sense, of course it'd be a failure of Pep's tenure if he wasn't to win a Champions League with the squad that he has, with the resources that they have, and some of the positions that they've been in as well in some of these big ties. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Who was the best player on the pitch last night, Nathan, in your view?
De Bruyne, I think.
Yeah.
I just feel his game has gone to another level over the last few weeks. The match against Liverpool, even if you think back, and there was similar moments last night, think back to that late chance that Riyad Mahrez had against Liverpool. De Bruyne is driving through the middle. Was it Van Dijk who was all over the back of him? And he still had the strength to be able to hold him off, to be able to lift his head, to be able to pick out this otherworldly pass. And he did that time and time again last night. So, listen, De Bruyne, it's no shock that he is one of the best players in the world, but he is doing it in the biggest games and being the outstanding player in a pitch full of outstanding players, which is a difficult thing to do. I still look at Phil Foden every time I see him and go, it's almost because he's at Manchester City and they've so many good players and they don't rely on him in some ways that you don't look at Manchester City and think, well, if Phil Foden doesn't turn up, Manchester City won't be able to win a game. That we haven't fully come around to appreciating his genius. He might well be the best young footballer in world football. It's not a startling revelation to say such a thing, but he is a big game player. Every big match already for City, he starts and he performs, and he has an unbelievable ability to just keep hold of the ball, off balance, under pressure, tight angles, his close control. Again, go back to that Liverpool game. I'm going back because I was sat watching it at the stadium, and you're kind of noticing things off the ball. But he didn't get involved in the game maybe as much as City would have wanted. But every time he got it, he did the right thing, and he'll try a trick. He'll have that little bit of confidence. At 21, to be doing it at that level, you don't want to get into wild predictions, but you could well be talking about English football's greatest ever player if he keeps going at the rate he's going at.
And I think that whenever Manchester City put in a performance like they did last night, you start to wonder, has Pep Guardiola finally settled on his first choice front three? And it's hard to suggest that Mahrez, Jesus and Foden wouldn't do the job in the Bernabeu. And I wonder, has the last 2 games of football for Gabriel Jesus completely changed or slightly changed how Manchester City view his future at the club?
I wonder, would he have started last night if he hadn't scored the 4th weekend? I know. If he hadn't started, he did, and then he scored twice last night. You just can't see Pep not doing something at the Bernabeu. That's maybe Sterling will come in and play in the left, and Foden will play at the false 9, or maybe De Bruyne plays in a more advanced role, and Gundogan comes in, and something will happen, something will change. Is he going to stick with that front 3 of Mahrez, Jesus, and Foden? He never does it. He never just sticks with the same front 3. So that does feel like their best front 3. It's the more orthodox front 3. It's the more sort of boring, straightforward front 3 in a way, of Mahrez naturally on the right, Foden naturally on the left, and Jesus, is a goal scorer and a poacher and just plays through the middle. But that's never how Pep looks at it.
Mark Johnson's been in touch to say City spend billions and score lots of goals, but God, they can't defend for their lives. They're overrated. How can they be the best team where they have no defence? Liverpool have it perfect.
They have an unbelievable defence. Goals happen in games. You see the exact same criticism of Liverpool defensively, with the high line and how they get caught out, and how can a team with that quality of defenders, that's football. It's not just straightforward and running in straight lines and a simple thing. Teams are always going to create opportunities. You're playing Real Madrid. Yes, Manchester City have a deeper squad and have more resources right now and should win that game. This is a Champions League semi-final. You're always going to give up opportunities. Like, you give up that opportunity against Burnley. You know, Wout Weghorst probably doesn't stick it away, but Karim Benzema sticks it away. Like, that's the level you're playing at. And yeah, they were way more open last night than you would expect from Manchester City. But a defence of Ruben Diaz and Emerson Porter, maybe it just shows the importance of the fullbacks that he has settled on, of having Walker at right back and Cancelo at left back, even though I think Zinchenko is brilliant, but having the two of them and their ability to move into midfield and the support they give midfield, maybe that closes all of that down, and Stones and Zinchenko don't offer that, and that gives a bit more protection to the back too. But it's a Champions League semi-final. You're always going to give up chances. So to say that they're weak defensively is an absolute nonsense.
Yeah,
it's the second leg. They should be able to manage it second leg defensively, because like they'll be stepping back a bit and playing it on the break, and that's where you get it done. Like for last night, they're a goal up. It was a mad game, but the second leg, just like be assured at the back and basically be able to hit them on the break, and they should be able to win the game.
I think that's just like the perfect recipe for there to be a complete bottle job for Manchester City. the first few minutes, you're like, this does not feel like you're on the front foot like the last game, and that's why
you can see the photo now, can't you? After Real Madrid win the second leg, which will be it'll be a photo from last night. Manchester City are leading 2-0. Riyad Mahrez is clear through and goal with Phil Foden free in the middle, and it's how did Manchester City conspire to lose this from this position?
Things you love to see.
That's like the Sterling Leon opportunity, really, isn't it? That screenshot that does the rounds, or Sterling celebrating against Tottenham in 2019. The sort of photos that happen before unfortunate events happen, and Manchester City have been in a hell of a lot of them. Just before we move on to Liverpool, just to like pay tribute to Karim Benzema, after the game last night, he was talking about the Panenka, and he says, "I always have it in my head that if you don't take a penalty, you will never miss a penalty. That's my mental confidence, and that's all. I have a lot of confidence in myself." And I kind of felt that, he got a laser to the face while stepping up to the penalty, and I think it was at that moment that he decided, I'm going to Panenka this. I'm like, screw you, Manchester City fan with the laser. I'm going to try and do this in the most embarrassing way possible.
The quality of his first strike is like it's just like, I mean, you just like what he's doing, Nathan, at his age, and like at a time when the game was slipping away from them. That first strike is just like amazing technique.
He's at that level that few players get to, that everything seems to slow down when he's around, that it makes it look so simple. And it's not just his finishing, it's his all-round play, how he can make the ball stick. Like, again, the confidence he has to try a little back heel or a little flick in a dangerous position, and for it to come off all the time. And then to try a Panenka, considering, missing his last couple of penalties. As someone said, is it a full Panenka if the ball isn't dipping by the time it hits the goal? Like, he did give it a fair belt for a Panenka. It was one of those just under the crossbar type jobs. But we've gone so deep into football analysis in recent years. Like, a penalty is no longer just a penalty. We want the entire thought process of. So,
would he have tried it under Guardiola?
Oh yeah, I think Benzema would have tried it under any manager.
Maybe.
Like, this is like beside the point here, but like, is it really difficult to aim a laser at someone? Because it like hits his face beforehand, and it's like, okay, well, this is going to happen for the penalty, and then the laser just disappears. Is the guy in the crowd like aiming wildly and actually just can't find him before taking the strike?
I don't know how far away he's. Like, if you have 150 of them in an African game, maybe it's a little bit different, but didn't put him off anyway.
No, certainly not.
When did lasers come back into fashion?
Yeah.
Because, Johnny, when we were in school, do you remember when... I'm saying because obviously we're from a different generation to own.
Our Irish teacher used to have like...
Used to be able to... on the back of the head. Man. On the back of the head all day.
Could your Irish teacher have stuck away a Panenka after such an incident?
Under that sort of pressure?
No, he wasn't able for the pressure of the laser on the board, so no, I don't think so.
Liverpool tonight, Nathan, are you like? There's been this interesting kind of narrative about Liverpool won't underestimate Villarreal the way the previous two giants who've been taken out by Villarreal underestimated them. Are we sure that's what happened in the last two rounds, though, that Villarreal just got underestimated? Like, I'm sure there's a degree of that, but are we not looking at Unai Emery, who's actually deep down a bit of a genius when it comes to figuring out these one-off games? I guess over two legs, but still, he's proven himself over the last two rounds.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a bit of respect given to Villarreal if you get to a Champions League semi-final, and you'd question the mentality of the players in previous rounds if they're underestimating in a Champions League last 16 or quarter-final what a team can bring. On paper, as Johnny said, these are the sort of games Liverpool win. Been at home in the first leg. is it quite the magical Anfield night? But if they can get an early goal, like they have shown over the last week, they can sort of win anyway. They come out against Manchester United, like 2 games against, almost similar tonight with less emotion, but the last 2 games where you look at Manchester United and Everton, 2 matches they really should win, but you think it's United and Everton, something will happen. And they just come out and absolutely blitz Manchester United from the first minute, never give them a sniff. And then they go up against Everton, who make it an absolute dogfight and a real scrap and a messy game. And they just stay patient and they use the depth that they have and they make the changes off the bench and they're able to do it that way. So it does feel as though they're in a very good place right now, that whatever Villarreal bring tonight, that Liverpool will have an answer for it, whether it's in the starting 11 or whether it's off the bench. But are you going to sit here and say that Liverpool are going to have this done after the first leg? I don't think so. Like, that's not how Villarreal is set up. Like, they are the underdogs. They're used to being the underdogs. They're used to having teams come, dominate possession, expect to win games. So it could end up being a little bit tighter than people expect.
Colm's just making the point in my ear here that Unai Emery is Porto era Jose Mourinho. I think he's. It's
no, it's not. He's not in any way in that. Well, that's the only comparison, because firstly, Jose Mourinho was the new kid on the block. Even he came up in Sky Sports Premier League seasons yesterday, and you're still looking back at Jose in his first press conference, and the charisma just oozing off him. Like, what a bloody good-looking man. He was then, still is, but nearly 20 years ago, he just comes in and changes English football. But that Porto team also had a group of players who were at an age that they were all going to kick on and go around Europe and go to Chelsea and be major players in European football over the next 5-10 years. This Villarreal side is at a slightly different stage. Yes, some of them I'm sure will move on during the summer, but there's a lot of good, hardened professionals in there as well who are at a slightly later stage of their career who can, who will they all go during the summer? I don't think so. So I don't know if that's a real comparison.
Europa League, Champions League is just this clarification there. Also, okay. I mean, who are you to say that Unai Emery isn't a handsome man?
I would never cast aspersions on any other man.
Connor Joy says, "How do you know it was a man with a laser?" He asks. I don't. It's a very good point.
Yeah, if you watch all the FBI file shows, it's always the man who commits the crime. But in fairness to Ancelotti, like Nathan, like you mentioned, like Mourinho, Ancelotti at his age has evolved and can still manage the dressing room. Whereas you look at Mourinho and you compare him to those Porto days, and it's like, well, you didn't change enough.
No, but again, you're like, Ancelotti seems to be a very different type of character from most modern managers in that he never gets massively emotional. Like Jose still just can't help himself against getting caught up in it, either referees, opposition, his own players. Whereas actually maybe just been a bit more solid, relaxed, chilled out is how you keep going into your 60s, because it does feel a bit sad now when you see Mourinho. He pops up after another Roma game and he's doing the same things. You're going, like, where's that guy gone? Even at his worst at Chelsea or at Real Madrid when he was up to no good, there's still something there about Mourinho that was captivating, that was quite likeable, that was a bit of a rogue, whereas now it's all got a little bit boring.
Yeah, is there a case to be made that then when Pep and Klopp are kind of done with their current Manchester City and Liverpool jobs respectively, there's just a stage where they're like, I'm kind of done with this, because
fight climate change.
Climate change could be a good start, but they just might find that their high octane, high energy style of management is, you get to a certain age and it's like, okay, gonna park that.
Well, Pep's done it before and stepped away, and you'd expect when you leave City that he'll step away again for a couple of years before. Like, these guys can't give it up.
Yeah.
Well, you do wonder.
It's one of the things I never understand in football, like Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard. I just can't understand it.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot understand why Frank Lampard is managing Everton. Like, he has it all. He has all the money he'll ever need. He's one of English football's greatest ever players. Yet somehow he needs to put himself through this.
And it's going to end in failure.
A perfectly nice life.
It's going to end in like 9 out of 10 managerial careers, essentially they get sacked and that's their last job. Like, so why would you do it? Like, there's so much else going on in the world. Why would you get immersed in this?
Just some sort of weird addiction.
But also, like, the appeal to add to your legacy. Like, if Frank Lampard's getting into management because he
But
thinks
he's never going to add to his legacy.
No, but he thinks
there's
he
nothing
thinks he
Frank
can.
Lampard can do now that is going to add to his legacy. Maybe at the start when he got the Chelsea gig and you win the Champions League and you're, suddenly you're past John Terry as their greatest ever legend. But now to go to Everton, like, is he a hero around Everton because he saves them from relegation on the last day of the season? I don't know if he is.
No, but he's seeing that as a stepping stone back to the big time, and like it's not about what the reality is. It's about what these guys think they can achieve, and I mean they didn't get to where they were in football without thinking that they were the absolute best around.
It's the thinking as well though. Like if you're like the wife of like Guardiola or Klopp or these characters, like I mean, what sort of life is that? Like, do they think about anything else in the whole day other than the next game or the last game or football? Like
but they don't have time. They don't have time. I noticed that after the Liverpool match at Guardiola's press conference. When you sit down and think about it, he was talking about the intensity of the calendar. And they played Liverpool on the Sunday evening. And they were playing Champions League on the Wednesday. And you're thinking, like, this is a massive game. So they barely have a training session on the Monday, but you suddenly have to prep for that. You travel to the match on the Tuesday. You play Wednesday. Then they were back playing again in the Premier League on Saturday. Like, you never mind. Think about life outside. You never get a day off. You never get every single hour, every minute. None of them can be wasted because of the intensity of the calendar and the importance of the game. So, yeah, how they switch off, how they somehow stay mentally stable under that level of pressure, I have no idea.
Donny OD88 has been in touch asking, has Johnny mentioned Gavin Bazunu or the League of Ireland yet?
We still have time.
Anything to say about Bazunu or the League of Ireland?
He missed out on the Team of the Year actually, Bazuna, in League One, which I thought was surprising because I would have imagined he was the best keeper in the league. Interesting point, Nathan, as your father will know well about Shivan Rovers. Gavin Bazuna actually played in Killeen. Played for Shamrock Rovers underage in a game in Killeen in the Shivan Rovers pitch. Yeah, so
I think they're going to build a statue in his honour.
Probably will. Yeah. I was there for his debut as well against Bray when kind of I think the whole Shamrock Rovers story changed when they put the 16-year-old kid in goal and he saved that penalty against Sadler in Cork. And I don't know. We're in a good place in terms of our defenders and our goalkeeper for the time being. I think anyway.
For sure. Is there LOI late night coming your way this Friday?
There is. I've been off the last two Fridays. So we've left Johnny and Shane. I think there's no real reason for me to return. Just go back to relaxing on a Friday night. But we're going to be back. It's the League of Ireland calendar is, it like everything else is a bit screwed up in that there's so many games at the start of the season. And I was looking at the Shamrock Rovers fixture list, sort of trying to plan out for the kids as to when and where we're going to game. So they're away this week. Rovers, but then they've got 3 home games in the space of 7 days against Finn Harp, Sligo and Derry, and then over the next 2 months they've got 2 home matches. How clubs are meant to try and flourish when that's how your fixture list works out, I'm never quite sure. And they're not alone. Most clubs are in that sort of scenario. So from what I think is the 13th of May all the way through to the 22nd of July, 2 home matches.
There is a wider point here in that you now have like billionaires getting involved in investing in the League of Ireland, whether that's for like the reasons of making money or for something else. But you have like the Comers are going to take over Galway United in terms of an 85% stake. You Philip O'Doherty in Derry, and you've Dermot Desmond. I think he owns a quarter of Shamrock Rovers, and there's probably never been a better time to invest. And Nathan will attest to this as well. Tala is becoming like I don't know, Nathan. It feels like something different in the League of Ireland. You go there now and you just expect 6,000-7,000 people or to be sold out. It's a nice stadium. You expect a very good quality of football. A lot of kids there, and the League of Ireland is, I guess, that's where it wants to be.
Yeah, and listen, as I'm sure all supporters of other clubs are ready to get in touch, Shamrock Rovers Stadium, was there because of a partnership, a government partnership. You could say they were handed the stadium, but more clubs need to be handed stadiums. More clubs need to be given facilities because people will go if the facilities are there. And there were some stats out yesterday. I think, was it somebody up north, Johnny, who was tweeting, look what Niall Quinn has done for the League of Ireland with the rise in average attendance over the last couple of years. But the rise in average attendance from 2017, 2018 to now is every club pretty much doubling their average attendance. So people are buying in, and I think they're buying in not because of I don't think quality of football is ever a factor or will ever be a driving factor in why people go.
I wouldn't agree with that.
Ireland. I don't think so, because like the quality of football is good, but I don't think that can be the selling point, because you've got right
Is
next
that not
door.
the whole point though? Like, I mean, well, like,
no, I think it's to go like you can have a good, entertaining game of football without it being the same quality as a Premier League match. I think people want to go and enjoy a match, be entertained, see some goals, but also go and have a decent seat, be able to go and buy something at halftime. Like they just want to go and have a night out. So.
Yeah, I don't know about that though. Like if you're fed on a diet of the endless TV, Premier League and everything else, like I don't think like the League of Ireland, the quality of the football in terms of the entertainment spectacle has gone way up, and I'm not sure you could get away with it if it weren't.
I don't know. Has it?
Oh,
like is the quality? I think it's got better because football naturally has got better.
Yeah, there is that as well.
Teams now play far more football. There's far less just hoofing it up. Unless you go down West Go United maybe. But most teams now are keeping it on the ground, playing a decent bit of ball. But I what I'm saying is that it's obviously never going to be comparable to the quality you will see on a Tuesday night in the Champions League. I think what it needs as a selling point is something else. The football will take care of itself. It needs to be, whether it's that community side of it or just making it a good Friday night, which I think is what a lot of people have done. Like Friday night's now our League of Ireland night. It's something to do that's not going to the pub. You'll have a bit of crack. You'll see a decent game of football. You'll have the opportunity to see players who in 2-3 years' time, you'll be able to tell your mates, I remember watching him, as Johnny just said, down in Shivan Rovers, and now he's a superstar. So I think they're the things that
you can relate to it as well.
Out.
Like I watched the game with Adrian Taff last night. It was the LMFM commentaries for Dundalk. He's saying, like, I'm a Man United fan, but like I can't relate to this anymore. Like when you go to League of Ireland game, you might meet them on the street. They're not on massive money. Like they're probably struggling to get a mortgage. I can relate to these players, and like it means something to me.
Being a Manchester United fan is probably half the problem in terms of not being able to relate to a team, to be fair. Nathan, good stuff this morning. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads.
Cheers. Nathan there with us. It is 8:11. You're with us here on OTB AM and a packed show still to come. We'll hear from Mark Lawrenson next, but first, the Football Pod is released every Tuesday morning on podcast just before 6 a.m. Just search for it, listen and subscribe. And episode 14 with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue is available right now. So keep an ear out in the ad break for the credit they give Galway for their game management on Sunday.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The greatest league in the world is back.
Every Friday night after the League of Ireland games, a place for you to come to give your opinion to Vane. There's a little button down on the left-hand corner where you can say that you want to talk. And Johnny, you're just going to have to mute yourself because you're ruining it for everybody.
I can't. I'm still ruining it, am I?
You are, yes.
We're going to talk about Waterford FC now. Let's change to the real first division now.
For immediate reaction from around the grounds, catch League of Ireland late night, Friday nights at 10 on Twitter Spaces. Follow @OffTheBall.
And if you analyse Mayo, any big result they've had, they come in this big burst of momentum, just like they did at the end of the game. Yeah, they get energy from everywhere. The crowd, they turn the ref, they're all shouting and roaring. They just have this enthusiasm for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. And if they have 2 or 3 of those, they could beat you. But what Galway did was anytime Mayo got any bit of a foothold in the game, they'd have an injury or they'd take all day over free. Like I was totting them up for head injuries. It must have been a record. Conroy, Walsh, Comer, Heaney, and Patrick Kelly. Like you're looking at probably a minute apiece there. And as it's going down the stretch, there was times where Mayo kind of lost that edge because the game was slowed down. And it was over cards as well.
But Jimmy, isn't this the thing that you don't associate that with Galway in the past? And whether you like it or not, there's a street smarts required to win the biggest championship games. And Galway, that you just saw things from Galway that you just haven't seen from them before. The defensive setup, the attitude, their tackling, the response to Mayo coming up, managing the game, all of that type of stuff. And you can get people giving out about this, and I don't care. If you're product choice and you're those Galway players, you needed to show a bit of steel to win that game, particularly after last year's Connacht final, where that was a bad way to lose that game. And they were pretty hammered across the board for how they lost that game. They came in into the white hot heat in Castlebar, taking on they were underdogs against that Mayo team, and their setup, their attitude, their game management, everything from Galway, they deserve massive credit for that.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
You're welcome back. It is 8:15. You're here with us on OTB AM. During the ad break there, you'll have heard a clip from the Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue, which is brought to you by AIB, proud sponsors of the GEA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more. Right, we are turning our attention back to Manchester City 4, Real Madrid 3 in the first leg of their Champions League semi-final. Delighted to welcome Mark Lawrenson to the show. Morning, Mark.
Good morning. How are we after that last night?
Oh, pretty good. Pep Guardiola says he's pretty good as well. He says no complaints about the results, the performance, anything. I'm so proud of the way we perform in front of the world. We did everything to win, and with courage, with the ball, without the ball. Do you think he's really that happy? Do you think he's going to wake up this morning with a few regrets? More than a few, potentially?
Yeah, he'll have a few regrets. I mean, certainly at 4-2, if he could have closed the game off then, that would have been, obviously the 2-goal cushion would have been massive. I think it was just one of those games. You get them occasionally, don't you? I mean, Madrid can only ever play that way, and I suppose in different reasons as well. City can be a bit like that, where they're always going forward. But he won't be happy about the goals that they conceded. But you've got a 1-goal lead, and probably if you'd said to him you get a 1-goal lead from the first leg, he would have taken it.
Did Manchester City in certain moments underperform defensively? Did they have their eye off the ball? Was it the anxiety of the occasion, or what do you put that down to, conceding 3 goals?
Probably that Benzema frightens them to death, like everybody. And they were probably, you're just on the edge that little bit. I mean, City aren't that great defensively. And before everyone starts shouting at me, it's because generally all the games that they play, nearly all the games that they play, they've got 70% possession. So they've always got the ball. The opposition never have it. But, even we saw the goal that Watford scored against them at the weekend. It's just that the way that they are. And against Madrid are always going to make chances because, again, they're a team who just, the whole ethos is, entertaining football, going forward, scoring goals. And they've had an outstanding season as well in the league, in La Liga. I think, do they only need a point now and they clinch the title? But in Benzema, they've got a player that's in an incredible run of form. I mean, it's just absolutely frightening. And I mean, the old Panenka was just, it was like, the game was wow. And that was like, oh my God, what has he just done?
It does seem that there's like this vein of ice cool attitudes throughout this entire Real Madrid squad, from Benzema in that moment to Modric in midfield to Ancelotti even on the sideline. Like, how hard is it to be able to produce that level of calmness in those big nights where any ordinary human being, despite how talented they might be, would ordinarily crumble or do the rash thing?
Well, I think it's just talent, isn't it? It's absolute talent. And if you think about the Benzema thing as well, he missed 2 penalties that weekend, didn't he?
Yeah.
So you can imagine, and apparently I saw something, Ancelotti was saying that he'd practice or something the day before, or I don't know, a couple of days before, and he'd made his mind up that if they got a pen that he was going to take a Panenka, which, when you think about it, is like mad, because the way the game was going, surely as he's running up, he's thinking to himself, he's like, well, should I still do it? Because if I fail, and the goalkeeper stands still, and it just goes into his arms. It's like, I'm going to look an absolute fool. But fair play to him. But, that's the thing. I think, that run of form, he just probably thinks at the moment he can do anything. Although obviously at the weekend he couldn't because he missed 2 pens. So it's mad, isn't it?
What they're doing at their age as well, Oro, the pace of the game for Benzema and Modric to be able to perform at this level, I just can't get my head around it.
No, can I say something about that, which I think is players are playing much older now. I think, because you look at Ronaldo and those kind of guys, just the way that they train, the diet, as I say, everything they eat, the way they look after themselves. A lot of them don't drink anymore, all those kind of things. And what it's doing is it's extending people's contracts. So when you used to look at a player who's 31, 32, you think, oh, his legs are about to go. That seems to be about 35 now. And I think that's a difference. And I think, that like the Modric's and the Benzema, they are very much the hub of that side as well. And you might say that the team's built around them. Well, it is, isn't it? So what you will have is that people, because they're such good players, if you're playing alongst Modric, you don't mind if you're charging around trying to close people down, because the bottom line, both with Modric and Benzema, is they win your games, and they win your games at the very highest level generally. I
think Salah's the interesting one there. Like, how long can he, and in terms of his contractual situation, how long does Klopp think that he's going to be able to be good enough to play for Liverpool, and how long will his legs withstand the ridiculous schedule that he's had over the last few years and be the player that, like, I don't know, he's at this stage this season he's been like peak Salah, I think. Like, how long, Lauro, does Salah have to be the player that he is at the moment?
I would think he's got at least a couple more years, at least. But you see, what I say about the diet now, they're so well looked after, these lads, and yes, they train extremely hard, but they train extremely hard at the start of the season. He has sometimes when he takes them away to the mountains in Austria or somewhere, Klopp, and they do triple sessions. And apparently it's like, get on with it. And that the whole thing about triple session is that's the thing that gets you ready for not just the start of the season, but all of the season. And there's one thing about it as well. Sometimes you do feel like you're super fit and you can do everything. But as I say, I think 31, 32. I just don't think it's an issue anymore. I mean, his contract's still an issue. It looks like it's stalemate at the moment, and I think that's over money. I don't think it's over anything else. So it's not over terms and conditions, because he's been there long enough. So whether that's sorted, I'm not sure.
Like, just on that point, it'll be really interesting to see the graph of Kevin De Bruyne now over the next little while, because he's going to be 31 in the summer. And if you take these last couple of months in isolation, Mark, the post-Christmas Kevin De Bruyne is the best version of Kevin De Bruyne we've seen in years, consistently speaking anyway. Like, he's been in and out of the team with unbelievable runs of form over the last couple of seasons, but injuries have obviously hampered him a little bit. It seems now he's operating at close to peak De Bruyne.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And he sees things that mere mortals don't see on a football pitch. He's also strong. He's a good finisher, and he has a free role in that team. And he's allowed breathers as well. I mean, that's the thing about it. If you're Pep Guardiola and he's your best player, he is the only player at Man City that you cannot replace, I believe. So you'll cut him some slack occasionally. You might leave him out for the odd game. But also in games occasionally, just have a little bit of a breather for 30 seconds and then go again. And it's clever management. It's just, make sure your best player is in the best form, the best health, and give him everything you possibly can to make him the outstanding player that he is. But also, I think he's very, very honest. You can see that, can't you? And he doesn't mind a tackle, by the way. And he'll put his foot in. But he's brilliant. They can't replace him. And we've seen that in a couple of games where they've obviously struggled without him. Everybody would struggle without him, wouldn't they?
If you are a kid, and we were all kids watching footballers when we were younger, you just look at him and you're like, this is what I want to be.
Yeah. And what it is then you go in your garden, don't you, and try and replicate what he does and stuff. Yeah, he's just absolutely brilliant. But I mean, they've got lots of players. Foden, for instance, look, Silva, the way he's been playing, and all those kind of players. But yeah, going back to last night's game, I mean, they should just package that and send it around the world. And I mean, the Premier League is the best league in the world. Liverpool and Man City are the two best club teams in the world, without argument. And long may it be so. But I don't think we'll be getting that tonight somehow at Anfield.
Yeah, this is the point though. Like, they are, like Manchester City, they are essentially the best team in the world at the moment. They need to win the Champions League. And this is it.
Yeah, they would, if they could do a deal with Liverpool, which was like you win the league and we win the Champions League, they would do. And they're owned by a country, and the owners basically want to win the Champions League because that's the highest league they could possibly win, the most prestigious league they can possibly win. And obviously they're throwing a lot of money at it and everything, but they want to win the Champions League. No argument whatsoever.
That's the thing as well. Like, okay, you can talk about the ownership situation and the fact that it's a very unfair world. It's very unfair with football. Guardiola's not happy. He's not happy at all leaving this Man City role unless they win the Champions League, and you know that. You can tell that last night, Laura, when they were 2-0 up, and obviously we talked about Mahrez and the not squaring to Foden. He's just not happy unless they win the Champions League because he knows that for him is failure.
Yeah, but also he's driven. So the thing you just talked about, the failure not to see it past, that he hates it because he's a perfectionist. And he doesn't want 9.75 out of 10. He wants 10 out of 10. And you get that with him. And I don't know if you saw who was the former captain, centre-back, now at Anderlecht, is
Company.
Vincent Company. Yeah. Did you hear it? Did you see his interview at the weekend?
No, I didn't actually.
Right, and he was just saying, that, when you used to play for Guardiola, and he said Guardiola would say to you, it'd make you understand why you did what you did when you were playing. Like, not what you did at the time, but why this is the way that it... And he said he just completely opened Company's mind up to something completely different. And he struggled for the first few years, Company at Manchester City, and they weren't a very good team, as we know, but he just said he's easily the best coach he's ever played under, because he made him think about absolutely everything he did on the football pitch in a completely different way.
He's a genius, and he's also the way he's effectively kind of making an evolution in the game where you can essentially play without a striker, and you even see that now at League of Ireland level where clubs are like they think if we have enough possession or if we have enough kind of bodies in the middle that we can have enough pace that we don't need a front player, and he is a genius.
Yeah, but you've got to have some team not to have a front player.
Yeah, say if this team now wins the Champions League this season, I know this is very much not the number one element of all this, or it won't be the number one storyline, but it'll be very interesting to see how they would utilise Erling Haaland next season if the reports are to believe that he does join Manchester City, because that's a piece of the jigsaw you kind of have to use. I know Pep Guardiola is not a hostage to anybody, but you kind of have to play Haaland in your number 9 position, which for me completely changes how they set up, especially in the context of last night.
Yeah. And the other thing, if you really watch Haaland, he comes on to loads of stuff. There's a lot of grass between him and the goal, generally, just the way that he plays in Germany. So, it'll take a little bit of tweaking from Manchester City's point of view. But look, he's a top goal scorer, and he's young and he's strong. And why wouldn't you utilise the fact that he's going to be he's already an outstanding striker, but he's going to be even better. And one thing about Guardiola is with all his players, and Klopp's been the same, he's improved all of them. Even if you think that he signed somebody who's a world-class player, he's made them better, and they both have. And basically that's the secret of coaching, isn't it? If you get all these players in and they're already very good, and you can make them in many cases world-class, then you're always going to win the majority of games and win trophies and leagues and cups and all sorts of things.
This might be a weird question considering he was on the losing side last night or oversaw a defeat last night, but if we accept that Klopp and Pep are the number 1 and number 2 managers in the world and in a tier of their own in terms of managerial genius, where is this current version of Carlo Ancelotti?
Yeah, I think he's so laid back now, isn't he? He's had so many jobs, and I think he's one of those with being at Real Madrid. He knows it's nuts, that club. It's absolutely bonkers, but it's a nice bonkers, and he knows that if he'd lost 4 games in the league this year, 4 games straight, he would have gone, and he knows that kind of stuff. So I just think he's one of those now, whereas nothing surprises him. He's going to play the players he wants to play, the way he wants the team to play, and you just watch him on the touchline. He's very sanguine, isn't he? He's not demonstrative or anything like that generally. And he knows he's got a good side.
What advice would he give to Frank Lampard, Lauro?
What?
What advice would he give to Frank Lampard at the moment?
Would he give?
Yeah.
Well, he bailed out, didn't he?
Yeah, get out.
He bailed out, so I'm guessing you know what advice should be given. As soon as a better job comes along, take it. Frank Lampard, I mean, the thing with him is he's just inherited a really poor side, hasn't he? That's the major problem. They can't defend Everton, and they actually did well for an hour against Liverpool, I thought, and people are moaning around me saying, they're diving, they're doing this and the other. Well, they're trying to do everything so that Liverpool couldn't score and put them out of the stride, because they knew if they'd gone to play Liverpool at football, they'd been beaten 4 or 5. But I think Frank Lampard will be okay. I have a sneaking suspicion. I know they're in the bottom 3. I just have a sneaking suspicion they might just stay up, but it might be more to do with the teams below them and one above them rather than anything else. So, well, you can't give him advice on Chelsea because he cleared off, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Probably the right decision.
I think he touched on a good point. Ancelotti's like, yeah, okay, whatever happens here, I've seen enough. I can kind of chill, like.
Yeah, like the thing.
And sorry boys, did you know the other thing about him? I met him. He's an absolute top bloke.
He's the coolest looking dude. Did you see that photo of him in his suit the other day where he's like posing for the photo? Like, if we're in our 60s and like, yeah, he's just. What
about him made him such a top bloke?
Well, he's got like real wicked sense of humour, and he's very, whenever you talk to him, it's just like, look, the waves wash over. He's just dead cool, and look, he's had an absolutely fantastic career, and this probably might be his last job, although you never know with these fellas. And he doesn't get uppity about anything. It's just he's seen everything in life. He's seen everything in football. He was a top player as well himself. He's obviously got loads of money, loads of houses around the world, I would have thought. And you can just almost feel with him that when he finishes, he's just going to like, well, lunch every day, big cigar, happy days, feet up.
Sounds like the life.
Until he gets the next job.
Managing Real Madrid is easy.
Yeah, exactly. Until he gets the next job, definitely. I think I'll just go and do this one as well.
They are 15 points clear at top of La Liga. Manchester City are not 15 points clear at the top of the Premier League. I know they're playing Leeds United this weekend. Like, it does seem the conversation we were having earlier on in the show very much points to, don't worry, Manchester City are going to be fine next week. They're not fine really though, are they? This is a hell of a battle next week, especially if they need to go hammer and tongs at that game at Elland Road.
Well, it will be hammer and tongs, won't it? That's the only way Leeds know how to play. The only thing about that is that will suit City because Leeds are very open defensively, as we know. So even though they got a 0-0 at the weekend at Crystal Palace, but and everyone's looking at the fixtures, etc. But that's a great thing about the Premier League. And people say it all the time, there are no easy games, and people go, oh well, like Liverpool won 4-5, City scored 7, all those kind of things. But going into them, they are really tough games, and I don't get this. And I've never obviously played in La Liga or anything, but I've watched it. But I see some of the teams playing against the likes of Barca, obviously, and Atletico and Real Madrid, and I kind of think, you know what, that there are easy games sometimes, but not in the Premier League.
In terms of the English game, right? So you look at like the depth of the 4 divisions, and you see Bradford, who are like stumbled along in the middle of the table in the 4th tier of British football, getting 15,000 at their games regularly. If you canvassed the non-Man City fan last night going into the game in the Bernabeu, the English football fan, how many of them want Man City to win? How many of them want Real Madrid to win that second leg?
Oh, I think most English people want City to win, would they not?
I'm not sure.
Right, okay.
In terms of the soul of English football and what they represent, and most a lot of football fans are not following the Premier League. They're following their local team, and they're following teams. And I am interested. Like I don't follow. Like I'm not going to games regularly, but like, do they want Man City to achieve this, or do they
probably
not?
For Foden and Stones and the English players?
Yeah, well, let's put it a different way. I mean, so just say City get in the final, and just say it wasn't against Liverpool, against Spanish team, whatever. City get in the final. Generally, English people will want City to win, and I think regardless whichever team you support, you would want the English team to win because it's fantastic for the game, isn't it? And
I think there's something about the Real Madrid side though, Laura, where you just you want them to do this. Like, I mean, the situations they've overcome in this campaign, like.
I think there was. I'm not. I think that's gone off a little bit I get your point totally, but I think in Ronaldo's day, I know, remember like all the superstars that they had. Listen, we talk about the other week, City played Liverpool, biggest game in the world in club football. It was a little bit like watching all those years ago El Clasico, because Madrid and Barcelona, but those two teams are on the wane. Even though the way that Madrid played last night, they've been on the wane in comparison to the way that they were. And I think English football is better, but they're still a great watch, aren't they? They're a fantastic watch.
Well, can I just ask Mark then? Obviously, we've already made the point that Liverpool and Manchester City are the two best teams in the world. Would there be a greater sense of anxiety from a Liverpool perspective if they get through the Villarreal clash about facing Real Madrid in the final? And by extension, is there actually a chance that Real Madrid are a bit more of a banana skin in the final for Liverpool if it is them?
No.
No,
I think
clearly not. They're an inferior side. Like,
I know they're an inferior side, as I've already said.
You can't. It's not at all. Like Man City are.
Weren't they the best team in Europe and they won 3 Champions League titles in a row? They were definitely a better team then than they were now, and maybe with Ronaldo you can make an argument that they were. But
the challenge, like if Liverpool play Real Madrid, they win. It's as simple as that because they're a better side and they've been doing it all year. If they play Man City, there's a good chance they won't win because Man City are a slightly better side than Liverpool, and that's how it is.
Yeah, the other thing as well is that the Real Madrid side of how many years ago, you never got the ball off them ever. Completely different now, and they were never brilliant defensively, but they had so many good players in midfield and going forward that they got away with it a little bit. They can't get away with that anymore, and I think both City and I think City will get through, to be honest with you anyway. But if Liverpool, whoever. If Liverpool were playing them in the final, I would think Liverpool would win, and I would think they would win quite comfortably. Because the other thing about Real Madrid is that they wouldn't be able to cope with the way that Liverpool play, because it's just the intensity is unbelievable, and the shape of the team, the way that they play, the amount of chances they create, etc. I think they'd be far too strong for Madrid.
Yeah, fair. I just think that there's been a couple of moments throughout this year's Champions League where we could have made that argument about Real Madrid, and I think even in the context of last night we could have made that argument about them that they should have conceded 6 goals, and they didn't. They just didn't do it. They just have not folded at any point. And
right.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see Madrid Liverpool basically.
Right. Let me give you this then. Paris Saint-Germain against Madrid. They honestly they lost it in 20 minutes, didn't they, over the 2 games, and they lost it because I think they made a change which wasn't defensively when they were cruising in the away leg in Madrid. And you might say, yeah, but Madrid came back and they did this, that, and the other. But the problem with Paris Saint-Germain is they should have been in the semi-finals. And the problem with them is they have a system where they play 7-3, and the 7 have to do all the work for the 3. But in a time like that, where you're completely in control of the game in Madrid, and your Neymars and Mbappe's and stuff aren't chasing back. They don't have to do it, and it's like, sort it out, boys. You're the hard workers in the team. I mean, that's a fundamental problem with Paris Saint-Germain, but they should have gone through. They really seriously should have gone through against Madrid.
It's not a vintage Real side. Like if Real were in the Premier League, like they'd be really struggling to finish third, you'd imagine.
And this is a one-off game in a final. I think that plays into it. But look, it's probably not going to happen. Manchester City are a better team, as you say. Liverpool are a better team than them as well. It probably won't happen. But I'm just very interested in the existence of this current Real Madrid side. Ancelotti looks like he doesn't even care, and yet, they're only a goal behind against a team who should have absolutely smashed them last night. It just nothing makes sense about this Real team.
In Madrid, they should win, but you just expect there's another narrative here that something's going to happen because I'm just not sure. I'm not sure if Guardiola is perfect for Man City in the Champions League at the moment, in the sense that I'd say his anxiety is probably almost feeding into them.
Well, his problem is I'm saying problem. It's minute, but sometimes he tries to be too clever, and my only worry about City going to the Bernabeu would be he might do something which is a little bit different. He's done it before, just change the system, change the team. I mean, Lyon away 2 or 3 seasons away, and they were cruising, and he decided to play a completely different formation, which they haven't even played before as well. But if he's got his proper head on and picks his best team, I don't see it being a problem at all.
Very quickly.
And listen, just going back a little bit with Madrid, is the days you used to go to the Bernabeu and you used to get like a corner and you'd celebrate. But nowadays, teams in La Liga go in and score on a regular basis against them generally, and certainly teams in the Champions League, are able to open them up all the time. Well, look at last night. Look at City and how many chances they created.
Yeah, very quickly, Mark. Liverpool to do the business tonight.
Yeah, I think it's one of those tricky ones, and I think if you watch the derby at the weekend, and I'm saying Arsenal were obviously making the most of the fouls and the tackles and stuff, and Villarreal will be like that. They've got a big centre back, big bearded guy. His name escapes me at the moment. He throws himself on the floor when
That'll be all.
And it's like the size of him. But yeah, Liverpool to win. Yeah.
Good stuff, Mark Lawrenson. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
We're 70 minutes into the show and we've just talked about football and it just hasn't felt like 70 minutes at all. That's how good that game was last night.
Champions League semi-finals is always the best week of the year from this show's perspective, because it's the midweek sport that is better than anything else, I think.
Your main love in life, I presume, is Kerry football, and these are amateur players who are and you can look at football last night and say, they're millionaires, Ancelotti and Guardiola, they're whatever, they don't want for anything in life and whatever, it's a bit septic at the top, but you watch a game like that last night and the quality, it's just it's just insanely good to watch. Yeah. Insanely good to watch the moment, and whatever happens, it's nights like that you just forget about everything else and just enjoy how good watching Kevin De Bruyne is.
Yeah, it's grotesque, but it's beautiful.
It's exactly.
OTB AM
beauty and all that.
Brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Time for the papers.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not having that, no.
Carl Milani's joined us in studio. Carl, how are you getting on?
Morning, lads.
I'm going to run through the papers before we come to you because I want to get your take on a good GA column. The OTBSports.com, if you just get it back up there. The OTB Brief, City Age Real, Thriller, Day 2 at Punchestown. There's more up there as well. Matt Slater, the Premier League dream has kind of happened, and the Hurling Pod, Limerick see off Waterford Clare making flying start, and Dublin edge Wexford. The gap is getting bigger as well, is also the headline around the Irish women's team. To go through some of the back pages, first of all, the Daily Telegraph goes with Manchester, City Age, topsy-turvy thriller, but Benzema gives Real hope. The back of the Irish Sun is Unreal, Foden, game still on after Etihad stunner. Meanwhile, Hibs' Roy talk continues. Hibs set to hold more talks with Roy Keane and his agents on him taking the Easter Road hot seat. He seems to be pretty keen on that job. Back page of the Mirror is madness. City takes slender lead into second leg after a crazy game and a Benzema Panenka bring on the Bernabeu. Taylor meanwhile says this is special. The build up to Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano continues. The back page of the Irish Daily Star, Pep's silver lining, Blues on top after 7-goal epic. And there's more context here on the Roy Keane situation. Darrell Horgan reckons Roy Keane would smash the old firm stranglehold on Scottish footballers' Hibs boss. As the bookies trimmed the odds on the Corkman replacing Sean Maloney, Horgan's convinced Keane would only consider taking the job if he's given a fighting chance to compete. And he says Roy is first and foremost a winner and he'll already have a good idea of what's required at Hibs. That includes the realistic potential for success. If Roy Keane went into Hibs and broke the old firm, that would be a hell of a story.
I don't know. I mean, it massively depends on what coach he brings in, because he needs somebody like the good cop, bad cop who can basically coach and has the tactical nous that he probably doesn't have. Roy Keane, to the young Hibs player now, is the guy from the TV, not the footballer. So what does he bring to a job? He hasn't managed for 10 years. So we spoke about the madness of it, but his legacy at the moment is, he did a very good job at Sunderland and then things went a bit awry, but do you expect him to go into Hibs and do a good job?
Do you have any different opinions about this story than you would have had about Roy Keane potentially going back to Sunderland a few months ago? Or is your take basically the exact same? It's
well, my very limited knowledge of the SPL is that Maloney was very harshly sacked in the first place. So and I think in fairness to Keane, he's wary of the job and he's wary of the chairman, he's wary of the board for the next job he gets, because I think when he spoke to Gary Neville on that hour-long thing or whatever, he's he wants the next one to be perfect, and I think that's what he's wary of. But I don't know, I mean, is he going to be like an innovator at this stage of his life in terms of like, is he going to be a Guardiola figure who's like constantly thinking of the game? And because for me, he offers nothing tactically on TV. He just offers sound bites, and he's very entertaining. But like, what makes him a coach? I don't see it.
What do you reckon, Colin?
Yeah, I think it's surprising that he's been linked with these sort of jobs, because when you watch him as an analyst, you get the sense that he obviously has such high standards, and whether he'd be able to implement those standards at club level with clubs that don't necessarily have such big resources. I would imagine Sunderland probably have bigger resources than Hibernian would have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting. And then, as Johnny says, in that scenario, you need to be a very good coach to get more out of the players that you have, talent-wise maybe, to succeed. So I'm not sure is it going to be a good fit, but the fact that he's so keen to get back in, he might be tempted. And I think he lived in Edinburgh when he played with Celtic.
Great city by all accounts.
Yeah, so I mean, he might be tempted back, and obviously the Irish connection as well. But imagine the profile lift it would be for the Scottish Premiership if he did go back.
Like, Colin Healy is the manager of Cork City, right? Colin Healy was obviously involved in Saipan in a completely different way. Colin Healy is a fascinating character who's creating like a really good impression of Cork City. Nobody talks about him. He's the aspiring coach. Roy Keane is the guy on the TV. That's where we're at.
Yeah, but like, who's ultimately going to have the better chance of getting a big job in English football over the next little while?
Colin Healy will do a better job.
Yeah, that's a different thing, though.
So I'm not sure Roy Keane will manage again. He might have one more go at it, but Colin Healy, nobody talks about Colin Healy, yet he's a Cork City, did 4,000 at an away game the other day. Deep thinker about the game, really, really interesting guy. He's the aspiring coach here, not Roy Keane.
On a slight tangent on that then, did you see Robbie Keane on Monday Night Football?
I just saw the quotes that he gave afterwards in terms of what he would like as a coach and all that. Robbie it'll be interesting for Robbie, yeah.
Because I was making the point on Tuesday morning that he's definitely not going to do a duffer, as in come to the League of Ireland. Because he's mentioned that there are jobs that he's turned down. But should he do a duffer or a Colin Healy, as it might be?
Well, in fairness to Damien Duff, and he's going into if Shelbourne goes badly, which it might. I mean, they're doing fine. Like he got sent off at the weekend. Like he says, this will be my only job in the League of Ireland. So he's obviously aspirations to go higher. But if he's a flop at Shelbourne, he's not going to necessarily get a job in England straight away then. So it is a bit of a gamble. And
huge risk.
He's there, he says he's having a glass of wine in the south of France. He's thinking about how good his life is. And yes, and we talk about managers, he takes the job at Shelbourne in a decrepit stadium in front of 3,000 people every week. But he wanted to do it. So there is a madness there.
How long do you wait? Like Robbie Keane said on M&F that he's waiting for the right challenge, but how long do you wait until the challenge passes you by completely? Whereas that's the situation Roy Keane is probably in at the moment, in that he's probably had dozens of offers in the last 10 years.
Well, you look at Lone Town, right? A basket case of a club in many respects, and you're talking to people who are possibly in line for the job, and they're like, the opportunities are not there, so we have to go. We have to go for whatever is there. And even in the League of Ireland, I think Oldham are getting relegated, which is John Sheridan. Other than that, there's no Southern Irish coach in the 4 divisions in England. Yeah. So they're all in Ireland. And Damien Duff is coming onto the bench, and he's competing against Stephen O'Donnell. He's getting sent off. He's getting jeered massively by the Dundalk crowd, and that's the opportunity that he has at the moment. It's really, really difficult for young managers now.
Do you think in any scenario Roy Keane would be tempted back? Because he goes to Turner's Cross quite regularly when he's at home, doesn't he?
The League of Ireland.
Yeah,
I don't think so. Yeah, he's a brilliant football man. He just goes to games. I think he probably even goes to Cove Ramblers games. He's just a brilliant football man. I don't think Roy Keane, I guess. I mean, you'd give him a job on the basis of his name, but there are far, far better qualified coaches to give a job to in the League of Ireland now than Roy Keane. And that might sound daft, but Roy Keane versus Colin Healy there's no debate here.
He'd also have to take a substantial pay cut from Sky Sports, you'd imagine, to do a much tougher job. Back page.
But on that though, the Sky Sports stuff, that's infinite as well. That will he'll not get away with the sound bites forever. So it's not like.
I think that he could go back to it if he goes into management pretty easily.
He can, but what's he offering week to week that's changed from what he was offering at the start? His reaction to saying he's sad at the Man United situation, that's grand, but tell me why they lost 4-0. Tell me about their defensive line. Tell me something that isn't a soundbite about how the game should be played. So it's not going to last forever.
Well, that's quite an optimistic view. I think soundbites have a long old future in our universe. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is Magnificent
Seven. OTB AM and all that.
City and Real serve up Euro. Johnny Ward slams Roy Keane. Here's 4 seconds. Serves up Euro Classic on a night of thrilling drama at the Etihad. And Katie Wow's US audience on NBC's Today Show. Back of the London Times this morning just goes with a simple headline: breathtaking. City and Real serve up 7-goal epic, and it's only half time. And also there's Chelsea buyers who are making a last pitch. These are the super rich American owners competing to buy Chelsea, have flown into London to make one last pitch before the club officials select the preferred bidder. So this is the owner of the LA Dodgers, who are making their final submissions on Tuesday, and who did make their final submissions on Tuesday, are going to be involved in that. The back page of The Guardian, Real roller coaster with a photo of Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden celebrating, I presume, the opening goal there last night. Slick City pegged back by masterful Madrid. Back page of the Herald is interesting. McCarthy to skipper Dubs. Veteran will lead Farrell's men as he seeks 9th All-Ireland medal, so it looks like he's going to be given the proverbial armband by Dizzy Farrell for this season. By the Dubs, they begin their campaign on Sunday. And then a back page of the Irish Independent, City leave Madrid off the hook. You've got that McCarthy story as well. And also Ten Hag ready to offer Van de Beek a lifeline at United. He's going to be given a chance early on by Eric Ten Hag. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Might just mention the Examiner as well, John Fallon, the brilliant sports section on Sports Supplement on Wednesday, but clubs face betting sponsorship dilemma, which is just talking about Drogheda United and Sligo Rovers kind of leading the way in terms of the League of Ireland clubs looking at sponsorship by betting companies. If Shamrock Rovers play Dundalk, they're both sponsored by betting companies, and it's a hot topic in the League of Ireland, and I definitely think Drogheda and Sligo have done a lot to engineer debate on that.
Irish Times, Silva gives City edge over Real in thrilling first leg battle is the front of their sports section. Just to quickly mention Darragh O'Shea's column, it's worth checking out today. Regardless of venue, Cork have been a disgrace. If we get time, we'll come back to that a little bit later on in the show. Cathal, you've got the headlines. What's happening?
Yeah, let's start with last night's Champions League action. Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola insists he's not disappointed with the outcome of their semi-final with Real Madrid. City will take a 4-3 lead after last night's first leg into the second leg next week, but they were unable to capitalise on a number of chances at the Etihad last night. Elsewhere this evening, Liverpool continued their bid for a quadruple. They welcome Spanish side Villarreal to Anfield for the first leg of their semi-final, and kick-off for that game is at 8 o'clock. Last night here at home in the SSE Electricity Women's National League, Shelbourne moved back level on points with Peamount at the top. They beat Wexford Youths 2-0 last night to move level with the leaders. Elsewhere, Cork City beat Treaty United 4-0, while DLR Wave suffered a 1-0 defeat to Athlone Town. And in the Championship last night, cross-channel, Nottingham Forest moved to within 3 points of the automatic promotion places after a 1-0 win at Fulham. Fulham missing out on their first opportunity to secure the title as a result. Elsewhere, second place Bournemouth came from 3-0 down to draw 3-3 at Swansea, and they'll host Nottingham Forest next Tuesday, so that's going to be a huge game. Elsewhere, last night Blackpool won 2-0 at already relegated Barnsley in the other game that took place last night. The snooker continues this morning at the World Snooker Championship at the Crucible. Ronnie O'Sullivan needing just 2 more frames to book his place in the semi-finals. He takes an 11 frames to 5 lead into this morning's session against Stephen Maguire. On the other table this morning, Judd Trump resumes with a 5-3 lead over Stuart Bingham in their last 8 meeting. In the other quarter-final ties that get back underway this afternoon, John Higgins leads Jack Lazowski by 5 frames to 3, while Yan Bing Tao and Mark Williams are level at 8 frames apiece, and both of those matches back underway this afternoon. The first of 13 in all of the last 8 matches progress to the quarter-finals, or to the semi-finals rather. In racing, Gordon Elliott could bring his career tally of winners to 2,000 today at Punchestown. The Meath trainer is on the brink of the landmark after 4 winners on the opening day of the festival yesterday. He sends Galvin off in the day's feature, the Punchestown Gold Cup. That goes off at 5 to 6, the first of an 8 race card off at 20 to 4. As mentioned in the papers, James McCarthy is set to captain the Dublin senior footballers in this year's championship. The 8-time All-Ireland winner will assume the role from Johnny Cooper, who led the side in last year's campaign. Dublin begin the defence of their Leinster title this Saturday against Wexford. And finally, tonight is semi-finals night in the Munster Under-20 Hurling Championship. Defending champions Cork play Tipperary and Thurles, while the Gaelic Grounds is the venue for the meeting of Limerick and Waterford.
Cathal, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads.
Punchestown, is that moving the needle for you at the moment? Are you going to be there over the course of the weekend?
Yeah, I'm there tomorrow. Mad results yesterday. It's typical Punchestown. You get horses just at the end of a season, absolutely flopping. But Gordon Elliott, I interviewed him on Sunday, and he said, I'm 5 off 2,000 winners. He's only 1 off now after 1 day. And he'd 4 winners yesterday. He had 2 winners at Cheltenham. Extremely frustrating Cheltenham. What did he have? 8 horses pulled up or fell or failed to complete in the Irish National. And this time last year he was banned. That's where he's at. I think he's really enjoying life. He's extremely hungry, and I was delighted for Noel Moran as well, who's had Party Central as a winner yesterday. He's invested a lot of money in the game. He's been unlucky with his horse at Cheltenham. But Gordon, I think, sometimes bad things have to happen to you in life for you to appreciate where you're at. And I think in the long term, I think he'll appreciate the suspension and maybe his rethink in terms of his life and his hunger to be the champion trainer, which remains elusive for him. Where does this week at Punchestown rank in terms of the kind of the peaks and troughs of Irish and British racing festivals? So it's kind of hard to get British horses over because at Grade 1 level they're so far behind. But you know, Clondazobo is over for the Gold Cup today. It's a great festival. It's not Cheltenham. And it's stretched out over 5 days, I think, which is a sign for Cheltenham that they shouldn't do it. But it's still like the best of the best in Irish racing, pretty much, and they're all there. It's just at the end of the season, you see with some horses yesterday, like Sir Gerhard, for example, Bob Bollinger, they're just not able to perform because they're basically trained for Cheltenham. Yeah, for sure. All right, we are bringing you Actually Have You Seen? It's a new slot where we're talking about McCarthy's Park this week. Joseph Conroy is on standby. First, here are the lads in the news round talking about those Keane to Hibs rumours.
And just one last very quick one. We're seeing Roy Keane and Hibs.
Yeah, Roy Keane apparently interested in becoming the new Hibs manager. The Scottish Premiership club will meet with potential candidates for the vacancy over the next week. Sean Maloney was sacked after just 120 days in charge at Easter Road. That followed back-to-back defeats to their Derby rivals' Hearts.
Ooh. Why are you making eyes at me like that?
Because I don't like the idea of Roy Keane replacing Sean Maloney, who I didn't even know was Hibs manager, who's replacing the guy who was your man Ross, wasn't it, who was on the Sunderland Till I Die season 2. He was the previous manager of Hibs. It just feels like Roy
beneath him
a little bit. Come on, put yourself on a level here. Stay on with Gary and Cara and Suey. At least you're on the top level there of what you're doing. It might not be what you want to do, but it's better than replacing Sean Maloney. Come on.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe he thinks do a good job there, get the Celtic job. I don't know. He said to Carragher,
Celtic have a pretty good manager.
He said to Carragher the other day that he thinks he was never going to get another management job again. So maybe he's really facing the reality of that and willing to take something in Scotland. I don't know. The reporting is he's interested, but we don't know what's happening.
Yeah, that's the news round talking about Roy Keane to Hibs potentially on the show last night. It is 8:56. You're with us here on OTB AM. It's brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Joe Conroy on the line. Joe, how are you getting on?
Morning, Al. Morning, Johnny. All good?
You are waltzing into our life with the beauty that is McCarthy's Park. I haven't seen this thing in a few years. Have you seen this, Johnny?
I haven't.
You haven't. You're missing out. Tell him why he's missing out, Joseph.
You're in for a treat, Johnny. We're kind of completing the transition this morning from sort of high-level elite European football to speculation about the next Hibs job to McCarthy's Park, the park that McCarthy built back in 1999. Basically what we're looking at here, Johnny, is a nice tight 1 hour available on YouTube. Nick McCarthy's first Irish campaign or failed attempts to get to France 98. If that doesn't whet the appetite, I don't know what will. But here's just kind of a taste of the type of fare on offer. Just a bit of context for a quick clip here. Ireland have kind of had a bit of a yo-yo, kind of typical, a lot of peaks and troughs in this campaign. We eventually get to this crucial Iceland-Lithuania 6-point swing. Ireland go, get to 6 points. And this is from the documentary, just the scenes on the pitch after the Lithuania crucial away win.
Archie, we boy! That's some of that. We've done it. 6 points. What do you call him? Is it Beglin? What was it? Is it Beglin and Giles? Yeah. That's some of that. 6 fucking points on the road. Oh, yes! What about?
Well, what's he saying there? Yeah, what's he saying there again? Is it someone on Giles? Like he's asking immediately in the aftermath. Beglin and Giles, sorry, yes, who's in studio. They'd obviously been throwing him under the bus quite a bit in the build up to that game.
Yeah, well, there's kind of a theme throughout this documentary. It's kind of at war with the media. There's kind of a war for the soul of the future of Irish football. It's actually amazing watching it, kind of given all the chats we've been having and sort of especially kind of being plugged into the Republic of Ireland news cycle for the last 2 odd years, where ironically Mick's come back into the frame. But it's just incredible. The kind of, if you want to put in a bit of context, we're talking about kind of 96 to 99, which is sort of the same period of time that Father Ted was airing. So that's kind of the Ireland we're living in here. Also, we kind of got the last embers of the Jack Charlton era and kind of the 2002 crop starting to come in. So you're blooding players like Kenny and Kilban. They're going to come into things. You've got Shay Given comes in through the campaign. You've also got a man who I'm not sure we speak about enough. We've got a young Roy Keane as well. I got one more clip just on the kind of theme of kind of sort of a bit of background on that kind of outpouring of relief you see on the pitch there. This is previously at the start of the campaign. Crucial home tie against Iceland in Lansdowne Road. Doesn't go well. Ends in a bit of a farcical 0-0 draw. This is before Iceland became kind of a European footballing utopian powerhouse. We've got a certain Roy Keane coming back into the Irish setup. Just before this, he had showed up or been available for 4 out of the previous 20 or 22 games. And he came back into Dublin, and it's fair to say there was an air of controversy hanging around his return to Mick McCarthy's Ireland team.
Roy Keane returns to the Irish squad for the home game with Iceland. Keane's commitment to the cause has been questioned. One newspaper has called for him to be booed at Lansdowne Road.
There was a couple of articles that actually encouraged fans to come along and vent their anger or show what they actually feel for Roy. Now, whatever they feel for him, what I would say is something that's bigger than that is the rest of us in here. That's the important thing. The team and the team doing well. And from the start of the game, when they booed Roy, the atmosphere was very, very poor. I don't think we enjoyed the support on the day that we've enjoyed in the past. At one incident, there was a bit of a cheer, and it was almost like they'd let the supporters in. I guess one or two supporters could say if we had a shot on goal, it was almost like they'd let a team in.
It's going to be a good documentary. Isn't it mad, like, just at the start there, that they're so worried about the media? And it was the same with Jack Charlton and Dunphy throwing the pen and all that. Like, you see, you've Dunphy, Brady and Giles, who effectively, like, you know, two of the best footballers that ever played for Ireland. Dunphy, who's like a very, you know, intelligent analyst, like, but these guys didn't make it as coaches, and the nation was hanging its hat on what they said. Like, as opposed to watch the game and make your own mind up. And even Mick coming off the pitch after a big win is worried about the media.
Do you not
That's
think,
Ireland, like.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, it very much feels like a point that is still relevant. And
well, look at the Sunday game, for example. The Sunday game will show 2 minutes of Gaelic football and 27 minutes of analysis by 3. Like, how about, like, show me the game and let me make my own mind up? We love the pantomime of it, and we love, like, the.
It's not just an Irish thing, though, really. I mean, we just been speaking about Sky Sports, and they're like, not that it's a pantomime. I think people will hang on every word that are people that are in studio. But when you talk about the importance of the voices that would have been critical of the Irish team, I think that you could point towards recent managements and say the exact same thing. I'm not sure, did Stephen Kenny and Keith Andrews read everything about them, or did they care? But certainly Roy Keane cared about what Keith Andrews was saying about him quite famously, and would have called him one of the biggest spoofers ever as a result of possibly his analysis during his tenure.
There's like, it is, though, it's true, kind of, you can see it does seem to kind of hit home. Like, there's a kind of bit at the end where it's sort of like this kind of pointed, candidly talking to Mick, kind of towards the end of the campaign, and he says he was at a function, and Johnny Jaws was there, and he does a kind of, and I saw him, I went over to him, and I think Johnny was getting some awards, like, and I shook his hand and I said, "Well done, John." And I know he's got a job to do, I've got a job to do. But just going back to that clip there, so you've got Keane coming back, getting booed by Irish fans. He goes on to kind of begrudgingly, almost like passive-aggressively, have an absolute stormer, win man the match in our disastrous 0-0 home draw against Minnows, Iceland. Mick gets into it with some journalists at the press conference, comes back to the changing room. John Aldridge has been an unused sub. I think he's 38 at the time. Mick comes back after his tetuous media engagements. Aldo comes over and says, "Look, Mick, I'm done. This is a joke. Good luck to you." I don't know if he actually said this is a joke, but he says, "Look, I'm not coming over. I should have been used there when we're chasing the game. Good luck to you." Could you imagine the OTB AM the morning after? Roy Keane's been booed by Irish fans, one man the match. There's been a fractious press conference, and all those walked away. Like, it's just great stuff. It's kind of stuff that you kind of forget about, and it's kind of, obviously we know Mick now as kind of the established guy and the guy who maybe like was there before the Kenny Revolution came in. But he's kind of in a similar situation at the time where obviously the disastrous and iconic loss to Macedonia as part of his campaign as well. And after that, it really kicks off from a Mick perspective. There's senior players who come to him. They have a bit of a, we've kind of been thinking about things and, Jack used to do this, Jack used to do that. And Mick says, yeah, I know, I was there. He kind of says himself, he would have been one of Jack's kind of main foot soldiers and sort of one of his main backers. And he goes, yeah, well, it's like, look, lads, Jack's gone. We're doing it my way now. But it's interesting. It is mad how even just kind of culturally, just even all these trips, like going off to Iceland, going off to Lithuania, going off to Romania, it all just looks so different. Like it's kind of back then when sort of you are property sort of in that transitional period after it's been a lot of change in a lot of those countries. You've got this one amazing scene where they eventually get the Belgium playoff. They play Belgium in Lansdowne, draw 1-1. It's kind of a bit of a disappointing result because they've given Belgium the away goal. And there's this bit where it's Mick and the team, they're in a kind of it looks like a hotel room or a kind of hotel conference room. I would say the team means coaching staff, and they're kind of going through, they're looking at the Belgian goal, and it's like, Shay can't do anything about that, but could Hardy have been on him? Yeah. Then they're kind of going through and like, yeah, it's really important now. People don't realise you really have to watch the game back. You can't take it all in on the sideline. And the camera just zooms out, and they're sitting there with little like tulip glasses of beer and peanuts in front of them. So it kind of gives you an idea to sort of like a window into another time and just sort of a reminder of how much has changed so quickly.
Yeah. Were you going to games around this time?
I went to the odd game, yeah. I remember going to the Iran game, the first leg of the playoff. I remember an Iranian guy asked me outside, are you going to Tehran? And just the notion of that. But we didn't... the hysteria around the Jack Charlton era, I was a kid growing up in that. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. But in terms of how we coach kids and how we developed as a football nation, we didn't kick on at all. We've had the Jack Charlton era into all these years of Ireland being basically a big underachiever, exporting all our players, not having a proper national league, not having technical players of quality, such that now you've Stephen Kenny taking over, who's we have to break from this. We have to break from the stereotype of us being this typical British nation that doesn't play good football. And Mick inherited obviously from the Jack Charlton era was legendary, but we didn't coach our players properly from there on, and we have a situation now where we're basically trying to reimagine what we are as a football nation.
Do you remember the night Keane gets booed?
I do, yeah. It kind of brings it back. I think it's going to be a brilliant documentary. I mean, a lot of people listening this morning will have been probably kids.
It's out. I mean, it's on. It's been out for years. Yeah, we're just talking about it because.
Oh, okay.
Because why not?
Well, then obviously there's a lot of documentaries on YouTube. But a lot of us would have been teenagers around that time, and the Keane thing. I mean, how could you even make it up? Of all the problems in the world, a fella leaving a squad about a football game, and everyone was talking about it. And if you ever got a poll on a national issue that was 50-50, that was it.
Yeah,
amazing times.
Well, it seems that it might have been mostly against Roy Keane for the Iceland situation, whereas obviously a few years later that would have the balance might have tipped back more towards 50-50. It's out in 98, if I'm not mistaken, Joe, is it this documentary?
Yeah, it came out in 99, so it would have been kind of the time, I think it might have been kind of around the Christmassy type, looking back at us not qualifying for that brilliant World Cup. Watching it as well is kind of, there are just all these little amazing nuggets, but it does make me wonder, what content have we been robbed of over the years? Where's Staunton's park? Where's Trapattoni's park? Where's O'Neill's park? Where's Mick's second park? Where's Kenny's park? But
we've got voice notes on WhatsApp now.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird, with documentaries, because everything's on. You can basically get everything online now. But you see the Navalny documentary the other night, and you're like, holy crap, the power of a good documentary that can completely change your day when you watch something like that. But obviously it's nothing compared to this.
Yeah. This is far more important journalism. There's also probably the sense that maybe if Mick McCarthy watches back, he'd be like, how did this stuff make the cut? Whereas, to kind of counter your point there, I wonder if we're going to get to a stage where there's going to be so many Netflix versions of behind the scenes in sport that actually there's a level of control about that as well.
Yeah, well, I was only thinking of this, and Joe is probably too young for this, but the documentary around Galway's 1998 All Ireland win,
done by Sunday.
Comer, who's basically one of the, I think he was like maybe second or third choice keeper, but like behind McNamara. Absolutely amazing. Like, and I was a kid in '98 going to the games, and like the way that took over Galway as a county, like I'll never ever experience anything like that. But that documentary was insanely good, like, and it was so ahead of its time. And you can imagine John O'Mahony, who's like coming in, he's brought Leitrim to win a Connacht title and whatever, he wants to do what he wants to do with Mayo, but he takes over Galway. And you can imagine in 1998, like Comer saying, I wouldn't mind filming some of this, would that be okay? And saying, yeah, sure, that'll be grand. And it's one of like the best things you'll ever watch, even as a Galway person.
What else from McCarthy's Park caught the eye? What is it, 24 years later?
Is this out, by the way?
Yeah.
It's going to be out soon, Joe.
It is, yeah. Keep an eye out. It's dropping any day now. Just a couple of things, like on that kind of how much filtered or unfiltered is it? Like they couldn't get into the dressing room, or they're not in the dressing room, but there is a bit where Mick gives them a tour of the absolutely horrible old Lansdowne Road dressing rooms, which are like, it's amazing how bad they are, but it's again, these are all these little things that will be kind of lost on time if they weren't up there in this random YouTube documentary. There's another thing as well, one of the big kind of, as part of that kind of rebirth narrative, McGrath had been frozen out of the setup. It's kind of interesting because you can tell it's kind of dealt with in a way that Mick kind of addresses it, but addresses it quite guardedly, where looking back now, if you read the book that McGrath did with Vincent Hogan, I don't remember the specifics, but I remember that was kind of a particularly kind of chaotic period that would have coincided with this documentary. So it's interesting. You can see those limitations, but I just got one last tip from it. Like, we're a bit kind of cursed that anything that's filmed with like a single camera and a person narrating to you about their job feels a little bit officey. Like, it's not officey to the point that actually Mick comes out of it very well. Very kind of, no matter how dark it gets, he kind of has this wry kind of gallows humor. But here's just a taste, kind of give you an idea of that theme of transition I've been speaking about. He's on the motorway checking out a hot prospect who's going to make a future impact on Irish football.
This motorway gets well used anyway. I'm not so bad actually, because I've got, within London, there's a lot of clubs I can watch all the players at. They all come to London at some stage. I do get around the country. I do quite a bit of miles.
A 240-mile round trip takes McCarthy to the Hawthorns in West Bromwich, Birmingham. A young player, Kevin Kilbane, makes the long journey worthwhile.
I get asked constantly about them. And I guess they've all got to keep playing well for the clubs. The lads who've done it for me here are tried and tested and done it. Now, if I get injuries somewhere along the way, people will be brought in. So if we do have injuries, please God that we're in France, I'll be looking at them all. Anybody who's performing well for the club and think they could handle it.
Isn't it beautiful, like, as we get older, that Steve McLaren isn't that image, and who's recently been linked with potentially getting back involved in the Man United setup. You know, Mick is still managing, and Joe, that is obviously like that brings me to that, like, was the last series The Office where he's doing his tour and there's
Christmas party episode.
Was it Christmas? Yeah, where like there's that footage of him basically eating in some lay-by, like, late at night, and it is the most quintessential life on the road crap, like, and how grim it is. And there was Mick going to the Midlands.
I don't think David Brent ever had a get up like that. He looked like he's James Bond in the white suit.
It's amazing. Someone's left in just before the ads, the little insets, and it's sponsored by Pennies. And I think the FAI had some sort of commercial deal with Pennies.
They did. I remember that now. Yeah.
You get a few shots of like Mick in this. It's like everything is kind of on the road, and there's one bit that's kind of like a more of a stylized. It's obviously would do the big interview with Mick for the documentary, and he's there in his like denim shirt with his matching denim jeans and his kind of what you'd probably call like a sports jacket, looking the part. But
Steve McLaren was in that shot as well, just in front of Mick McCarthy at the Hawthorns. Like, is he at Manchester United at this point? Is he scouting somebody for Manchester? Is he scouting Kevin Kilbane for Manchester United potentially?
Well,
Kevin Kilbane, sorry.
Kilbane.
Yeah, the Kilbane of our life.
Sorry, we didn't even know Kilbane was Kilbane yet.
This is the qualification campaign for 2000 or 98?
98, which is also
probably a bit before he goes to United.
I think that gives it a bit of it kind of gives an extra angle to documentary for me, because if you think of what could have been, like, we were we controversially lose that Belgian playoff, and I've left out the Belgian stuff, and I've left out some great stuff like them chatting to Nick's dad and his wife, just because if you actually do bother to go and read this out, think of how good these little nuggets we have. There's even better stuff in it. So that's kind of my pitch to it. But yeah, imagine if Ireland had been at France 98. It's a bit of a sliding doors moment as well. We kind of there's a controversial throw-in that leads to the goal against Belgium that gets us knocked out. So you get kind of great footage of the heartbreak after that, and kind of Mick channeling through this sort of defiant, kind of proud of the players. Then he starts getting emotional. Then he gets angry. Then he's talking about how he knows that, especially you've got more of the young guys coming through by that point at the end of the campaign. He kind of speaks about getting to the dressing room first, but then kind of having this moment where he kind of goes, right, you need to pull yourself together and kind of be the leader here. But yeah, it's a great little artifact floating out there on the interwebs for your perusal.
It's one of the most heartbreaking feelings to consider all the tournaments and all the memories that would have happened had Ireland been there. Like, I mean, we saw the Irish fans in France in 2016. Imagine what France 98 would have been like with the Irish fans there. I think Netherlands, Mexico, South Korea was Belgium's group in that as well. You might have given Ireland a bit of a chance of sneaking out of it or causing a bit of an upset. Just one last thing, Joe, before we let you go. Obviously, we saw those West Brom kits there, absolutely gorgeous. Your favourite Ireland jersey from around that era as OTB's resident style expert?
It's got to be the orange Macedonian number. Like, all kind of, and like we wrote a piece on the side about this a couple of years ago, and it was kind of actually later on I found these old letters to the Irish Times kind of giving out about that jersey. So we're talking about 96 there, so kind of 2 years before the Good Friday Agreement, where like things were obviously a lot more probably politically charged than they are now. But so the orange jersey, between the result and everything else, kind of got shelved, but it's good to see it back now. Hopefully it'll be staying in the rotation. But yeah, as a sidebar, just all the gear, all the training gear, every sweatshirt Mick has, this is like prime 90s Umbro when they would have been kind of Ireland, England, United, Celtic, and just everything. It's all the stuff that's kind of coming back now. It's like, if you're on kind of Style Watch, this is again another beautiful little nugget to check out.
Doc Martens as well. They were the thing when I was like, I remember when I was in national school, Doc Martens were the thing, and here we are like 25 years later and they are again.
Are they back?
They are, yeah. Well, Doc Martens, absolutely, yeah. Have you not been around?
I haven't a clue. Just talk to me about clothes and you lose me straight away, unfortunately. I wish. I wish. I need a pennies agreement like McCarthy and get a white suit or something.
That will be sorted by 9:30.
Joe, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers.
That's McCarthy's Park. You can get it online if you want to watch it. If you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, it's absolutely worth rewatching. I think I might go rewatch it.
Did you watch the Navalny documentary?
No, but I've heard absolutely exceptional things.
Man, like, I mean, yeah, like the power of a documentary to, and like I didn't know this was actually out for 25 years or so now, but yeah, even. Yeah, it just gets you, and like I think Mick has a great humility about him as well. Like he's been managing for basically since then up till now, with like a 6-month break maybe in between at most. And even we had Jack Byrne on and we met him afterwards, and he was like nothing but good things to say about him. I think you survive as a coach because players like have a good time for you as well. They respect you, and like, you know, coaching may change and football may change, but humility goes a long way, I think.
For sure. Let's tell you what's coming up on OTB Sports today. OTB Gold from 1 o'clock is Dr. Harry Edwards. Koi Gig episode 13 coming your way at 3 o'clock. A retro panel at 4 o'clock. And then Catherine Switzer is OTB Gold from 6 o'clock. You can just ask your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio. You can, of course, listen to OTB AM as a radio show live every morning on OTB Sports Radio and the OTB Sports app every morning as well. After the break, we're going to be chatting rugby with Matt Williams.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The team of OTB are taking on a challenge that requires fitness, a challenge that demands months of training and preparation, a challenge that requires knowing when to push and when to focus on recovery. Triathlons aren't easy, but having a fitness coach helps.
Whoop are helping us non-athletes.
Bod is a pro.
Yeah, as I was saying, helping us non-athletes feel like pros in our challenge to complete a triathlon this summer.
OTB Sports, in partnership with Whoop. Unlock your inner potential with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that provides you with actionable feedback on your sleep, training, recovery and health. Check out whoop.com for more.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
You're welcome back. It is 19 minutes past 9. You're with us here on OTB AM and we are turning our attention to rugby. Delighted to welcome Matt Williams back to the show. Matt, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, Alan. Morning, Johnny. Very, very good. Thanks, mate. How's yourself?
Yeah, very well. We were just having a chat there about some of the greatest fly-in-the-wall sports documentaries. You strike me as somebody who'd be a good appreciator of a good documentary. What's up there for you, sports-wise?
Oh, gee, look, there's so many, isn't it? I love the 30 from 30s and you know, the one on Jack Charlton last year was quite magnificent. There's so many great ones out there. The All or Nothing series too is brilliant. I think that's the closest one to reality that I've seen.
Yeah.
The one on the Dallas Cowboys is that series on the Dallas Cowboys is very, very close to taking people into what it's like in a day-to-day professional team.
We will get to Champions Cup in just a sec, but just on that point, like that access and the relationship that rugby has with that access at the moment is in a really interesting place. Like if you watch the Champions Cup on BT, for example, you're getting in-game interviews from the likes of Stephen Larkham, for example. You're getting that footage of Graham Rowntree, telling a few home truths to that Munster scrum, I think, at half-time in that first leg against Exeter a few weeks ago. As a sport, it does pretty well in terms of giving those insights.
Yeah, it's not something I particularly liked. I was always asked that all the time, and I just said, no way. I used to actually walk into the change room and they put a camera up in the change room, which I think is really wrong. I get a piece of paper and just blue tack it straight over the top of the camera. They'd always want to have a camera on you all the time. They're just waiting for that gotcha moment too. So, look, I think the game's changed and people want that part of it more and more. There's difficulties with it because you're saying things that are private that all of a sudden become public. Like when you talk to your players at halftime, where you have to say something quite strong to them, you're saying that personally, and for that to get out into the public, it does cause problems within a group. So I think there's a balance of what people want to see, and how you keep your relationships within the group, and what has to be said. Because with it, I think it's the thing that perhaps Michael Jordan, in that wonderful documentary series that I've watched 3 times, brings across more than anyone else, is that winners are brutally honest. And when you're part of a really successful team, I've been fortunate to be in a couple of really successful teams, the honesty is just so brutal. It forges really strong relationships that last your lifetime. But most people would think that that's being disrespectful to people. It's not.
Sorry, Matt. Did you watch the Where's Your Pride documentary last year?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, because you got to watch that. Like, I'm not even into rugby, but like what Ireland winning those 2 Triple Crowns in the early 80s when the country was in a really bad way in terms of people emigrating and that. And I guess, Matt, it's just from a different era, but like the rugby that Ireland played, innovative rugby at that time, and also just what it did for the nation in a decrepit Lansdowne Road with like the place going absolutely nuts, definitely should be on your bucket list.
Yeah, look, and I'm friends with a number of guys from that era and that team. Willie Anderson's a great mate of mine. I was very blessed to work with Kieran Fitzgerald for many years, and just one of the most wonderful men you'd ever like to meet in an encyclopedic rugby mind, and Hugo McNeil, and so many of those guys I've met and got to know over the years. And the bond and the forge between those men is quite extraordinary, and what they've done in the rest of their lives with rugby also tells you so much about them. But I think they're very aware of what they were involved in at the time. It was a tragedy. We don't have tragedies in sport. It was a great disappointment they didn't win a Grand Slam, because that team certainly deserved it.
For sure. We haven't had you on since the Champions Cup round of 16, Matt, and I think it's fair to say maybe you were a bit sceptical about how the two-legged affairs would actually go. Did your mind change at all after some of the drama you saw in the second legs of those last 16 matches?
No, not at all. I'm more convinced than ever.
Right.
I think if I can put it to your listeners in this, imagine we're talking about the Masters that's just been on, and we were all up watching at night. That was wonderful. Imagine on Saturday night, the Masters committee says, listen, by the way, we're going to make a very small cut, maybe 15% of the players. You're not going to play on Sunday, but now everyone's off scratch. So what's gone on Thursday, Friday and Saturday doesn't count. It's whoever wins on Sunday. And some bloke who's been 10 over has the round of his life, and another guy who's been 9 under all week, all the 3 days, he's back to zero and he loses by a stroke. That's what we had. Like Ulster won 5 games and lost 1, and knocked out by Toulouse, who had won 2 games. You come down to on the other side of that, you had Harlequins, the same thing, 5 and 1. They won 5 games, lost 1 in Montpellier. Montpellier had won 2. They go through. That's not a fair, anything near an even playing field. Now we're in a COVID year, and there's reasons for this. Okay, I get it, but that cannot stand. That cannot go on, where you can have teams that can win 1 or 2 games all season, that come to the round of 16 and they knock out a team that loses 1 game all year. So it just doesn't hold up on any scale of a meritocracy that all sporting competitions, in whatever laws they have and whatever scores they have, it sustains them, it gives them value. There's a couple of teams there, Montpellier shouldn't be in that final 16, and Toulouse, and I'm great fans of how they play. Don't get me wrong, I love watching Toulouse play. I'm been a great supporter of that club and an admirer of that club. But they did not perform in this competition for a whole lot of reasons. And they've been given a free pass because of COVID. Okay, we can accept it this year. I think whoever wins this year, unless it's one of the teams that has won a lot of games like Leinster, there'll be a question mark on it. But next year, that can't stand. You can't have that type of format that undermines the credibility of the competition.
I think, from a football perspective, Matt, on this, just very briefly, you've had in the League of Ireland, you've had 2 teams go up from the First Division into the Premier Division who were totally ill-equipped for the job in the playoffs by complete fluke over the last 2 years. And in English football, how they think it's an acceptable system that it's a 2-legged playoff between 3rd and 6th. You finish 3rd, you finish way ahead of 6th, and you have a 2-legged playoff, which is not meritocracy at all. How is it not like a one-off game played at the home of the team that finished 3rd? Give them the advantage. So as much as you want to make it exciting, as Matt says, you're just throwing away everything that happened throughout the year to make it into this situation.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Well, I was just going to say the thing that should occur is the quarterfinals in the Heineken Cup is the best weekend of club rugby in the year, because you've got 8 quality teams playing 4 games across the weekend. Now, if they made the quarterfinals home and away, that would be wonderful, because there's 2 great legs of teams that have made the quarterfinals, as long as it's a meritocracy that gets you to the quarterfinals. Now, the problem is that the meritocracy has been taken out of the competition by that. So what is the advantage? And if we spin this back, let's put our cynical caps on. I know you can't believe you can be cynical in rugby or sport. The French and English clubs, if you put this system to them, they're not going to care about the pool stages. They're just going to play seconds teams. So we just got to make sure we can make the cut. And the cut from the pool stages to the round of 16 was so minimal that they could win literally 1 game, as happened to Stade Francais. 1 game got them into the round of 16. Now, Stade Francais at one stage against Racing 92 were leading that game and were in front. Now, Justice came through and Racing won. Racing had won 5 games to the last game. Stade Francais had won 1, yet they were leading in that other game, and they would have gone through. So the French and English clubs don't like the European Cup as a whole, because that it takes away from the focus on the top 14 and their premiership in England. So this system that would allow them to sneak into where the money is, so let's come back to the round of 16 for money, that's what they would do. Money was to be made in the round of 16. Now, I get it. Everyone's lost a lot of money because of COVID. They had to generate money. Clubs, this was a way for everyone to get a home game to generate money. I get all that. And I can understand it in a COVID year. But for the integrity of the competition to go forward, you can't do this. I came out of Super Rugby. When Super Rugby was going, I was just watching the United Championship with the Irish teams playing in South Africa. When I was in South Africa, and Andy Friend was with me, the Connacht coach in South Africa 20 years ago, the stadiums we played at were packed. There were 30,000, 40,000 people, 50,000 at the old Ellis Park, the Emirates Stadium now in Johannesburg. They are empty. They are empty last weekend. It was so sad to see it because of administrators mucking around and tinkering and changing what were wonderful competitions. The Heineken Cup is the best competition in the world. If they, club competition that is, if they keep tinkering with this and doing what they're doing and it loses its integrity, it'll go the same way as Super Rugby and what we're seeing in South Africa at the moment, which is no one going to club rugby, which was once so thriving in that country.
Probably a good jumping off point then, just to talk a little bit about Connacht. There's really interesting thoughts though on the tournament format and what they actually do from here. But just on Connacht and I guess the win in South Africa last weekend, it's an interesting time for them, given I guess the mood music was quite down on Connacht after getting hammered by Leinster the week beforehand, and this idea of how do they get to the next level within the 4-tier Irish provinces almost. So what do you see as the immediate future for Connacht? Like, what sort of business can they do in the off season, and what can they be targeting over the next 1 or 2 seasons, do you think?
Well, I'm not talking out of turn. I text Andy Friend straight after the game, and I don't do it very often because I don't like getting in coaches' ears, even though they're friends. I just said that was an historic win. That's something to win at Ellis Park at any time. Any team that wins at Ellis Park at that altitude where it is, the difficulties that throws up. And I know I've been there, I think I've been there 5 or 6 times with different teams, Emerging Wallabies, the Waratahs, and then through Super Rugby. It is such a difficult place to go and win. And for Connacht to go down there after getting their backsides handed to them by Leinster, in that game at the Aviva, for them to find a way to win at Ellis Park is one of the club's great wins. That really must be so infuriating for Andy and for Connacht supporters and the players is they're so up and down. They're just so inconsistent. But that is what a young team developing does. They are inconsistent. They'll have great wins, great performances, and a couple of weeks later they'll be absolutely terrible. And look at what Connacht did after their heroics playing against Munster. They then go over to Edinburgh and play absolutely shocking. They play brilliantly at the sports ground against Leinster, and they're appalling at the Aviva. Then they go to Ellis Park, one of the hardest places in the world. And just for your listeners, like, because of the altitude, the oxygen, you just don't get enough oxygen there. It takes your body a couple of weeks to get used to playing in that altitude. And, so much so that you can kick the ball maybe 15 metres further than you would at sea level. You could see Jack McCarthy was just his contacts with the ball were just absolutely magnificent. Just flying through the air. That's what happens at altitude. So that is a young team. To answer your question, it's easy. It's 101. It is their defence. Their defence is killing them. Even in that game at Ellis Park when the Lions took a quick tap, they're all still talking and looking at the referee, the backs turn, and it was like something in the under-10s. The Lions took a quick tap and just ran over the try line. After all their heroic work, all the work they've done, they let in a try as ridiculously simple as that. Their defence against Leinster was really poor. Their systems are wrong, and the players' commitment at times is wrong. Now, where does that start with? Well, I think the defensive coaching has to really be looked at. The system they're using, they're very vulnerable to kicks coming through because in behind their back three system is really poor, I think. But if you look at them, they're scoring a lot of points, but they're just letting in far too much. And at this level, your defence is your foundation. If you haven't got your defence right, you're dead. And that's unfortunately what's happened to Connacht. They can match it. Andy came out and said that he didn't believe Leinster were that far in front of them. And a lot of people said, that's not true. Leinster have got a great setup and great teams, but they're not that far in front. But Connacht's defence is a long way behind and inconsistently behind. And until they fix that, they're going to struggle.
Just very quickly, Matt, before you wrap, is there a chance that Andy Friend has another rabbit to pull out of a hat, almost, if you can use that phrase, with regards to somebody like Mac Hansen coming into the team? Because it seems like it's that sort of knowledge that he has that is a point of difference compared to some of the Irish provinces, and something that might be able to elevate them relative to resources.
For sure. Look, on big days you need your great players to play great. So you need more high quality players in your side. There's no two ways about that. And he tells a beautiful story about Mac Hansen, because he's from the same town, from Canberra, where Andy's from. And he said one of his friends owned a bar, and he rang him up and said, I've got this bloke called Mac Hansen's been coming into this bar here. He's Irish qualified. And he said, what's he like? He said, he's pretty loose. He said, I like loose. Give him my phone number. So that was his recruitment method. I'm sure he's telling a bit of a tale there, but you do need quality players, and you need to recruit them in. And obviously, quality players that are Irish qualified are even better. I think Andy, he's such a good operator, and the players obviously respect him and enjoy. I heard you talking about Mick McCarthy there. The word respect. Mick's a lovely human being. I've had the privilege of meeting him a number of times over the years. When you meet people like Andy and Mick, you come away with the feeling of the decency and the humility of the men. And when you're that sort of coach, that attracts players. They want to work with good people. So hopefully they can.
Absolutely. Matt Williams, great as ever chatting to you. Thanks a million for hopping on the line.
Pleasure now.
Cheers. Matt Williams there, chatting rugby. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We are right out of time, but just one very quick thing to leave you. You mentioned this earlier on. Dynamite in Darragh O'Shea's column this morning on one of the GA sagas of the year so far in the Irish Times, page 25. Regardless of venue, Cork have been a disgrace. It's his headline. Yeraism is dead, everybody. Does anybody really think they weren't going to field the team, he asks about Cork? Were they seriously going to wave Kerry through to the Munster final and throw their hat out of the whole of 2022? Come on now. Apart from anything else, that would have taken a level of stomach and bottle that they haven't had a lot of in recent history. Let's be straight up about it. In the last few years, Cork footballers have been a disgrace in the way they've performed, in the way they've stood up for the great history of Cork football. They haven't played for their jersey. One win against Kerry in 10 years of football is a terrible return. There's no two ways about it. He says he gets it. He says the Cork footballers saw an opportunity to plant their flag and take on the world. But God almighty, this looks like a cause without any rebels. What's their big victory here? Playing a championship game in Páirc Uí Rinn? Sure, they don't even like Páirc Uí Rinn themselves. He says, maybe I'm a soppy traditionalist, but I genuinely thought that once you start playing Cork versus Kerry Munster Championship matches in league grounds, you're basically saying these are like any old game. And then one final line from it. Graham Canty's team would never have dreamed of playing Kerry and Páirc Uí Rinn in the Munster Championship. Not a hope. They wouldn't have trivialised a Cork versus Kerry game like that. They wouldn't have accepted that it had become so small time that it could have been played there. They would have had more pride in themselves. If this page isn't up on the dressing room wall,
yeah, the proverbial. I'm not sure they do that anymore. But just a note on that. Cork has a good rugby tradition. It has a very, very well supported soccer team in the capital. It has dual county in terms of football and hurling. Where's your hurling in Kerry like? Basically, so Kerry has football, it doesn't have much else. That's why
they won the Joe McDonagh Cup last week.
They did, but like basically Cork has a lot more going on. Kerry is football, nothing else. So like
it literally does have hurling. They literally got to a Joe McDonagh Cup final last year, and they literally did just beat Carlow last week.
Okay.
Like I think it's unfair to call Kerry a one sports county when the hurling team did get to the final of the second tier competition last year.
Bit of hurling in North Kerry, alright, but I mean you can talk about that. Cork has a lot more going on. Kerry is football, like basically that's Kerry's football.
And what does that have to do with Darragh O'Shea's column this morning?
Because it's like Cork football is not a big thing in Cork compared to other sports. Like look at the sport they get. Cork footballers are terribly badly supported. To the best of my knowledge, it's like Cork football is a thing in the west of the county. It's not a massive thing in large parts of the county. Kerry is football. That's it. Like
Yeah.
So it's like Kilkenny, like you did your piece in Kilkenny. Where's your football team? Like, so
it's still a huge thing in Cork. Like, I mean, West Cork isn't a small place.
No, it's not. No, and it's an amazing place. But like, I remember watching Cork Galway in Crow Park, where there was like, I'd say there was 1,000 Cork people at the game. Like, it's not football is not a big thing in Cork relative to other sports.
As Colm just pointed out, they were All Ireland champions in football more recently than they're All Ireland champions in hurling.
You can't like. If Cork were playing the qualifiers in their first game, how many people will actually travel from Cork to see them?
The reason why those numbers are low is because the Cork football team haven't been good in recent years. There's a bandwagon element to it, like there is with every other county. Just like Kerry, people won't travel to Páirc Uí Rinn compared to, say, if the game was on in Killarney. So I think there's a bandwagon element with every single sports team. That comes from success, and it comes from location, it comes from the time of the year that the game is being played in. Cork were the top 3 counties in the 2000s in football. Got a huge football tradition. They've won more All Irelands than most counties in the country in football. Like, being second fiddle in Cork is still being second fiddle in the biggest county in Ireland, with a massive population, the second city.
So they've a huge football tradition. So in their qualifiers, with all the population of Cork, how many people will actually bother their arse to watch them in the qualifiers?
I don't know.
That's support. Like, that's what you do. You support your team, even if they're not particularly good relative to, like, you go and support your team. You've only a handful of games to watch the Cork footballers all year in a meaningful game. Would you be bothered your arse going to watch them? Most people aren't.
So you think Darragh O'Shea's right? Wrong?
I'm not sure. Like, Cork have obviously been poor in football, but like, whatever. I mean, in Kerry, you have football. In Cork, they have a lot of other things going on.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Be sure to follow Off the Ball across all social media channels and download the OTB Sports app for your latest and best sports content. Johnny, a pleasure. We'll chat to you again tomorrow morning. 7:30. We've got Graham Hunter, Tommy Welch will be with us, and Tommy Rooney will be on to discuss the latest from the football pod and the championship at large. Right now, we're bringing you Joe's chat from last night's Off the Ball with Eddie Brennan, reviewing the weekend's Leinster and Munster championship action.
Now we're going to talk some hurling. To do so, very happy to say, we're joined on the line by 8-time All-Ireland winner Eddie Brennan. Hey, Eddie.
Good evening, Joe. How's the form?
Nice to be able to say 8-time, isn't it?
I don't know. To one name I was never really called too long, but it was more Edward. If I was called Edward, I knew I was in trouble. So that's the only you got your official title when you're in trouble at home.
Let's start with Limerick Waterford then, because everybody was very curious to see what Limerick was going to turn up post-league, and everybody was curious to see how Waterford would pitch up post-league, and then they weren't maybe themselves against Tipperary. So what did we see? What's your takeaway from this game?
I suppose it's maybe in between a little bit, because I think everyone points to the fact that Limerick lost, after 8 or 9 minutes. They were down 4 All-Stars after, their All-Ireland winning teams in Cian Lynch, Flanagan, Kyle Hayes and Peter Casey. And I think they kind of looked at it and said, well, Waterford even couldn't, do the business without those 4 guys. But if I'm in Liam Call's shoes, you're obviously a little bit disappointed. But in the broader scheme of things right here, right now, and obviously qualification is his priority, and you want to get qualified as quickly as you can, because Munster can be just an absolute minefield. But I think overall, if there's a time you want to take the Limerick scalp, it's maybe not that. That's after the match when you haven't succeeded. You can comfort yourself a small bit in that. But I think they've closed the gap. I think a little bit of decision making. You talk about even frees. I think Stephen Bennett possibly missed 3 frees, maybe 4. And that can be significant then in a match when the margins are so fine. But, you just once again, Limerick answered the questions. And we'll probably get into that in a few seconds. But yeah, look, overall with Waterford, they're close. Physically, they fronted up. I think it was a great match. I really enjoyed the physical aspect of it. I think there was 1 or 2 comments maybe said about that maybe Sean Stack missed 1 or 2 things, but I think Sean Stack done a really good job considering the pace and the intensity at which the match was played at.
Yeah, very little time in the ball for anyone, which is great, is what you want.
Oh yeah, it was just real championship stuff. I mean, if you got this in a Munster final or a knockout championship match, you're gone home a very satisfied customer, having paid your ticket into a match like that. So I thought it was really enthralling match. The energy levels, and I think for both teams, probably their second match in 7 days, I would imagine there was a lot of sore bodies come Sunday morning, and the recovery, obviously knowing that there's a little bit of a break for them, for the next 14 days or whatever it is.
Something very impressive about the Limerick resolve. You mentioned the injury situation. No Kyle Hayes, Seamus Flanagan, Peter Casey, and then they lose Cian Lynch after just 9 minutes. So that's a big blow. I mean, we've talked about Limerick's depth over the last couple of weeks and questioned how much depth there is. But that's a pretty hefty amount of all-stars to suddenly be without. And right throughout the game, when Waterford pegged back in the second half level scores on 53 minutes, and I think at that stage you were thinking, oh, this could be maybe on here. Waterford are sticking with them physically. Then Limerick just seemed to find another gear. 7 unanswered points, and the game feels over on 62, 63 minutes. And then Waterford come again. In fairness to them, they come again. They score 2 goals, all the momentum. They're within a single point. Now, often at that stage of a game, when a team maybe feels they're out the gap, 7 points up, and they get goal, they're shell-shocked. And often the team with momentum goes on to see it out. But again, Limerick almost at will. Steady. They respond with the next 2 points. They win by 3. And in some respects, I feel like 3 points puts a sheen on that scoreboard for Waterford. I think 7-8 points is more reflective of the gap between the sides. But talk to us about that Limerick ability to, go 7 unanswered points and then withstand the 2 goals. There's something very impressive about that.
Yeah, I think their in-game awareness is quite good, and I think what it is there's probably ultimate trust in each other, because they never seem to panic. They know that one player is going to come up with a big play, and with the injuries, Gillette delivers a phenomenal performance. Hegarty, despite the fact that he was going toe-to-toe with almost 3 or 4 different Waterford fellas, he's still able to pick off his points. He's still able to find a moment where he just breaks out. And then for me, probably the standout thing and what really impressed me was, I think, Conor Boylan and Cathal O'Neill, 2 young guys, 20, 21 years of age. Boylan starts and he just is in the middle, in the thick of all the physical action. I mean, at one stage, I think in the second half, he's going forward and there's a Waterford lad very close behind him, and he just runs into 2 of them and he drives them flying, and he still finds a way to win a ball. So Cathal O'Neill, I suppose some people maybe said, he had 1 or 2 wides. I was so impressed with the fact that he persisted in taking his shots. And I think that's the type of stuff that a manager loves to see with a young lad coming in. But it's ultimately both of their appetite for work, and that transfers. People wonder, where does that come out of? That comes from your training field. I would imagine the internal matches in Limerick are phenomenal at the moment. I'd imagine they're knocking lumps out of each other. I'd love to see it, because that doesn't happen by fluke when you get into the championship field, because ultimately training and what you do on the training field prepares you for what you're going to experience in a championship match. It doesn't shock you. It's nothing new. So the intensity of the Limerick training sessions, and obviously they're just relentless drive, their appetite for work, and obviously their belief in each other now. This comes from winning, Joe. So when you win a couple of All-Irelands and you're under the pump in a match and you're under pressure and you deal with, they were 2 big blows they took to cough up 2 goals like that. And again, the second goal in particular was just class, a real Waterford goal. And it suddenly puts the game in the mix. But again, come with the hour, come with the men. I thought for me, at that point in the match, it was probably the likes of Hannon. Hannon just said, look, not today. And I thought he was absolutely brilliant as well, ably assisted by Burns.
And do you agree or disagree that 3 points maybe flatters Waterford a touch? Are they that close to Limerick?
Yeah, I suppose if this was the All-Ireland final and Waterford managed to pinch it, I suppose that thing goes out the window a fraction, because it's the results. But yeah, no, I do. I take your point on board and say Limerick were probably just seeing it out and maybe just took their eye off the ball for a split second. I think that's something that Kylie will probably want to address. But you are up against a quality outfit, and I think if there's one thing, Waterford equally, they didn't fold there when that match looked to be slipping away from them, and missed a few wide. So yeah, I think maybe 4 or 5 points is probably in and around it. But at the same time, I think from Waterford, yeah, aspects they're disappointed with, but I think we're definitely looking at probably a little bit of a. Definitely there's a trilogy possibly in the mix here at some stage. Maybe this year we could be seeing that. But definitely I think these are 2 teams that are on a collision course at some point this year. They're going to meet again.
And look, if it is maybe 4 or 5 points as opposed to the 3 points at the weekend, that's still a big improvement on the 11-point gap of the All-Ireland final of 2020 and last year's semi-final. So they are making headway in that respect. You know the way you talked there about your sense of the Limerick training sessions, that the matches would be, I suppose, akin to what we would have said about your team at Nolan Park under Cody. For those matches to work and catch fire, I suspect a few things have to happen. One, Cody, or in this case John Kiley, leaves his whistle in his back pocket. Everybody has to understand this is full bore, we're going at it. And then the question I had for you, to what extent do you need 30 really elite players? Like, can those matches work if you maybe have 20 and then a big drop off with the next 10 or 12? Because I would assume it's pretty hard to get 30 of a certain level.
Yeah, no, I think that's the key point there, Joe. I'd imagine John Kiley and Paul Kinnerkin and co would want the lads to just go at it, hammer and tongs, and say, look, lads, in match situations, we'll play them when the ref decides to blow the whistle. But other than that, we want to be the ones dictating the terms of engagement. We want to be the ones going in there. And ultimately, and I mean this with all due respect, you're not looking for protection off the ref. You're not looking for assistance from a ref. You're just going, the match has to be played on our terms. So that was something that we would have often spoken about, regardless of what the opposition bring. We have to play the match on our terms, and for that there has to be a huge appetite. But the key point in that, Joe, is, and you touched on it there, is the application of your guys who are the 16, 17, 18, 19, all the way up to 31, 32. And I think where that comes from and how you get that maybe is that if you have one or two stragglers that come in there and they do the sums and they're not buying into the whole squad ethos, I think they have to be removed quickly enough, because you have to have guys in there that are all vying for a spot. And again, I know sometimes you look at Limerick, say, no more themselves, you have a settled 15, and sometimes players, and rightly so, look at it and go, oh God, I don't think I can get in there. But, you know, they may be 19, 20, 21, so they're playing for a future career. And I would imagine that in the one-on-one chats, that they're the ones where John Kiley is dangling that carrot in front of these guys and saying, you know, there's opportunities here. And I heard him use the term in his interview after the match, it's next man up when somebody gets injured. And what you're saying to your players is, if you aren't ready, if you aren't at the pitch, on the training ground, night after night, when we watch you and we're watching what you're doing nice and silently to see, are you ready and into our consideration? Well, when that call comes the day of a championship, like it did for Cathal O'Neill after 9 minutes, and you're not ready and you're not dialed in, suddenly the ship sinks. Suddenly it breaks down.
And so, like, the 30th guy isn't going to be as skillful as a frontline player. Could you live with that? Like, was that was okay once the application and the work rate was there? Because you couldn't expect everybody to be, you know, have all-star hurling skills, or did you need the 30th guy to be nearly as skillful?
I know, see, I suppose it depends what your training session is about. You could have a tactical training session where maybe the intensity levels or the gears, you're not going up through the gears, you're just kind of getting maybe some walkthrough stuff on movements and how you create space and all that. But if you were setting the tone for an internal match, you're probably setting the tone a couple of days out. And what you maybe don't need fully is, you don't need a beautiful exhibition game of hurling.
Right.
All you need is 33 or 34 guys that are coming in and they're ready to just, I suppose, take each other's lives on the pitch within the context of a match, where no stupidity applies. But all you want off of them is that it's, you know, and I suppose Peter Barry used to say when we were training, he said, I hated when we had an internal match and the forwards were flying and scoring heavily. Whereas the match where we had 111 to 13 and it was a grunt and it was ugly almost, that's when you know your intensity levels are good.
And when you say set the tone a few days out for an internal match, what does that involve? Does Brian Cody send out a WhatsApp or a group text message to say internal match Thursday 7 o'clock? Is that all he needs to say?
No, but it would be unlike it. I think it would be, you know, your training plan is, you know, guys are getting their training schedule ahead, and players too will quickly spot, well, the Friday week maybe before a championship match. And obviously when you're in the current format, you don't get that privilege. Like I said, you don't get to play those internal matches, so the team sometimes can, you know, there might be an opportunity to jump in. But you would probably set it at least a week or two in advance. Say, look, lads, you're earmarking 2 different days, and maybe on the Tuesday night of a skill session or something like that, you're saying, look, lads, Friday night, it's a full internal match. You land into training and you might be siphoned towards 2 different dressing rooms, 2 sets of jerseys, and it just creates an old edge to training, and lads are coming in and there's a and they're looking across. This is the part probably is that's important, is you're looking across and saying, am I with the probables or the possibles, or is it a general mix?
Yeah.
And that can sometimes really add a nice edge to the training session.
And which were feistier, probables versus possibles, or a mix?
I think probably if you want to get a real edge to it, it's probably the possibles against the probables, and it depends then what happens. But if the possibles, don't come out, and maybe sometimes the manager will go with those and try really prod those guys in some ways, or else the two coaches. I just recall one occasion with Laois where, I might have gone with the probables and Tommy and Niall went with the possibles, and they really poked the lads and they came out and they just polished the boys. So that type of scenario is what you're looking for. And ultimately, you don't want it to descend into stupidity.
Yeah.
But you really, that's how, in my experience, you got that edge to your internal match.
And so paint me a picture here. I'm imagining Jackie Tyrrell marking you, and a ball goes in and he absolutely goes through you. It's a hospital pass. He takes you out. It is beautiful. And then he stands on your hand for good measure. And you look over to Brian Cody and say, is that not a free? What happens then?
Yeah, well, usually you didn't look at Brian because there was no point. You knew the answer you were going to get. And I suppose I remember one evening being on the receiving end of a hospital pass, and Jackie was a bit closer to me than I would have liked on a ramming mission. And so I literally ended up just not catching the ball, trying to slap it straight back and protect myself to dilute the hit somewhat. But yeah, look, I think there's an element of that comes with it. And I suppose quickly, we were up in a training camp in Wexford one year where Jackie and Richie Hogan had a famous bit of a cut in, and there was a bit of slapping and belting going on off the ball. And I remember at halftime when Brian pulled it in, there was just a general warning, and he kind of said to the two lads, Jackie, Richie, cut it out. It's stupidity and you're going to get sent off. The problem was Jackie was gone to the toilet. He never heard the warning, and it just returned to round 2 when the match started again.
Oh dear, great times.
Yeah, good times, all right. It might have felt it at the time, but look, it was where you get your edge. Again, in those same matches, I recall another evening looking out, myself and Michael Kavanagh in the corner, really good friends, and there was just attention to it. There was no talk, and outsiders, you had Tommy and Henry, and I think at one stage the two of them were rolling around the ground, and the ball came into us unexpectedly, so we didn't get to enjoy the spectacle that was going on in front of us.
God, it must have been amazing though to be part of that, to be looking around, and by the way, sorry, I retract the Jackie standing on your hand part. That was just needlessly cynical.
He would do that.
Okay, well you can say that. You could say that. But it must have been amazing to look around, and I'd say you almost felt blessed to be surrounded by these absolute winners. That on a Friday internal match, they're going at it with the same intensity as you. You've got a manager like Cody who's driving it on. I mean, man, you like a deep kind of satisfaction driving home afterwards, or in the dressing room afterwards, or chatting about it, afterwards when you all come together again and make friends. Like that's a pretty special environment that you won't always have.
No, it is, and I suppose at the time you maybe don't get to enjoy that as much as you do. But I've seen the Limerick lads, in the aftermath of their successes recently. Even there was a bit of fist pumping going on with them, last weekend. So there's a good spirit there. There's a real bond among them, and that's what we had too. We were very fortunate. But I suppose, there was always that kind of real sore, tired satisfaction.
Yeah.
But you knew coming off the field you were ready, and I think that was the big thing with us. We knew we were ready. That whatever the opposition threw at us, we were ready. There was nothing going to shock us. There was nothing going to be left fields. And I think obviously the key to that though. And we know in sport, unfortunately, 15 and you have your few after that. But those, that wouldn't happen unless those, the other guys apply themselves wholeheartedly. And I suppose that's the maybe the cruel side of sport sometimes is that you enter into that context and into that kind of environment with no guarantees, and there's no guarantees that everyone can get game time. But obviously, the collective is obviously the important thing, and that's probably the trick with a lot of teams is to get to that position. And Limerick look as if they're in that position, and it's working for them.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of unsung heroes behind the scenes that we don't see much of on the pitch. Just one last point on this Limerick-Waterford dynamic. The whole country really feels like, as you said, this could be a trilogy, certainly, or maybe if it's not a Munster final, then certainly a meeting down the line, maybe an All-Ireland final. And you do very well to listen to any podcast or read any piece now which doesn't say, oh, well, look, Waterford aren't going to beat them twice, or Waterford aren't going to beat them 3 times. It's a good thing they haven't beaten them. And I've even heard, suggestions that they might be better off not playing them in the Munster final, that once now and get them later on, because that'll be their best chance. I'm looking in from the outside. I find this very strange. I would have thought you want as many cracks at them as possible, and you do want to beat them in a Munster final. You want to plant as much doubt as you possibly can in Limerick minds, land a psychological blow, and then you beat them again in the All-Ireland final. I find it hard to accept that if you were to beat Limerick in a Munster final, it would lessen your chances further down the line. And yet it's what so many people in the game are saying. Can you give us your sense of that dynamic? And even from both sides, I mean, you've been with Kilkenny, you've been the Limerick, so I presume you wanted to beat other teams early and often and keep reminding them that you're the best. So your sense of this dynamic about this trilogy and what suits Waterford?
Yeah, well, I suppose the trilogy may not come to pass this year. It could be down the line, but yeah, no, your point is spot on. I think if I'm the Waterford, I mean, we might be saying that from maybe the outside the Limerick camp and saying, Jesus, this might be the only way, because we're looking at Limerick and seeing where are those cracks, where are you going to get at them, because they keep answering the questions and they're impressive. But I think I would be agreeing with you on that. I think if you're the challenger like that, you want to put a little doubt in their heads. You want to push that they suddenly now go home after a Munster final, licking their wounds, saying, oh God, these lads they've closed the gap and now they've taken us and they've beaten us on a big day. They've taken a Munster title off us. And now you're kind of worried about them. And yeah, you come back afterwards and you say, right, we'll figure out, or we'll analyse them or whatever. But I think if you're Waterford, you now need to know that
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.